welcome everybody to MogTalk. If you guys are unfamiliar with MogTalk, it's a show based around the Final Fantasy XIV community discussing everything from Savage Raiding to Chocobo Racing. And today is Saturday, July 15th, 2023, and we are going to be discussing healing in Final Fantasy XIV. And kind of the state it's in, now that we're kind of a little bit over that rating hump. We're not going to have too much more 8-man content, Savage-wise at least. I brought on 3 experts to complement my stupidity here while we talk about healing. I'm going to let them kind of introduce themselves, and we'll just go around clockwise, I suppose, or counterclockwise, depending on what group you're in. Momo, can you tell everybody who you are?
Hi, my name is Momo. I'm a content creator for Final Fantasy XIV. Resident healer, stuck in healer jail. Started playing healer back in Stormblood and have not left the job since, but not to my own volition, of course.
I love that I brought someone on the show who's like, I don't want to play healer, but I'm kind of forced to do it.
I actually like healer.
Okay.
Unbeknownst to these two, I don't know about Rinon. I know Kareth does not want to play healer though.
Okay. All right. Let's get to it. Rinon, tell everybody who you are.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Rinon. I'm the token European here. I'm a controller player, healer main. I make week 1 guides for week 2 clearers that then get outdated 3 weeks later.
And then people complain about it for 6 months after.
Yeah. They're like, man, you really didn't think this guide out enough, huh? And I'm like, come on, man, I made it day 5. Give me a breath.
Oh, that's great. You get it out so quick for the quick, infamy of, having that guide for, the rest of the tier. All right, well, cool. Kareth, can you tell everybody who you are?
Yeah, I'm Kareth. I'm not a content creator. I heal for Kindred. And I've been trying to get free ever since Shadowbringers. It's not for lack of trying. One of these days, I will not play healer and I will be free forever.
Man, what did I do? Seriously, people recommend people to be on this show, and it turns out to be people who are like, oh, well, I kind of do it because I'm the only one who will do it.
It's not bad to have pessimistic, the sides,
Sure.
or,
Yeah.
you have the neutral. I'm gonna say Rinon's neutral. Okay, I don't know. Maybe he likes it here and there. I'll be like the good guy. I'll be like, yeah, dude, healing's so good in this game. It's so fun. I love it. It's such a exciting and thrilling experience. And Careful just be over there. He'll be like, nah, this shit sucks. I hate this. I want to leave. I want to get out of this.
I guess I kind of am in the middle because the way I think about healing is great for exactly 1 week, and that week is prog, and then healing fucking sucks, and I just want to avoid it as much as I can.
Yeah.
Man, I'm a kind of the same boat in a way, but I approach the game in a way that makes me love healing. And it's masochistic, right? You say that you love it for prog, and so yeah, I do too. But I forced myself in Party Finder prog for months and months and months, and I only join clear parties in Party Finder and heal. So the prog never leaves. So maybe that's why I've come to love healing. Real quick too, we talked about this a little bit, but just to make sure, experience-wise with the healing jobs, I'm a one-trick pony right now with Sage, and I've played a little bit of White Mage. Momo, have you kind of gone around and played all the healers?
Yeah, I mean, I played all the healers throughout the expansions. I mainly play Astro right now, though. Astro and Scholar.
Okay. Rinon?
Yeah, I play everything. The only job I haven't progged on for quite a while is Astro, but I play every healer pretty much, yeah.
Okay. Would you say you're a main of a certain healer, or is it literally just whatever?
Okay, so I might as well breach the subject now because I know it's going to get spoken about. I was a huge Scholar simp when Endwalker released, and then after the first tier, I played Sage for literally the first time, and I can't go back to Scholar now, so I'm a big Sage simp because it's so easy to play.
Yeah, I play it, dude. So it's really not that hard. Sorry guys, I'm adjusting stuff on the screen too as we're going through. You'd think a professional person who runs a podcast would have all this stuff like in the right spot, but I'm doing it as we are live here. Kareth, you experience-wise with all the healers, I assume everything, but maybe you have a main.
Yeah, I've played everything. It's been odd moments since I played Astro though.
Okay.
I play Sage primarily for prog, and then I'll play like Scholar when Kindred does speeds.
Okay.
Yeah, is that true? What happened this year, buddy?
What do you mean? Oh, okay. Sorry. Did you want the full explanation? Okay, buddy. Okay. So for the first few turns, I will play Scholar because it does more damage, and you hardly really ever have to move for the first few turns normally. I was planning on playing Scholar for 9 through 11, and then we did 10. And I was like, you got to move quite a bit. I'm gonna play Sage, and so I swapped one turn early. But for ultimates and the final turns, I'll always play Sage.
Okay. Sage is a fun one, man. It's the new healer that came out this expansion. We aren't going to see another healer probably for 6 years. You think? These are the healers we got. So I kind of want to ask you a little bit about this and just start the show off with this topic in general. Now that we've finished raiding here, we're not likely going to get an ultimate or any other challenging, difficult content outside of Criterion. How do you feel about the current states of healers in Final Fantasy XIV now that we've kind of hit the end curve here and we've hit the final mark of what they decided to do, I assume, for development until 7.0? Dog shit, hate it. Kareth, all right, got your opinion.
I was gonna wait. I was being patient.
Yeah, see, like, I'm like being polite because, like, I think most of us could talk of a storm.
Do it.
But
who is ever going to do it more? You know what, Rinon? This is the first time you've been on, right?
Okay.
Why don't you take the floor here and go first? Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not going to talk about job balance or anything like that for now, but I feel like Square Enix always kind of misses the mark in terms of making healers really engaging to play. It's like a mixture of things, right? Like first of all, the DPS rotations are completely garbage. I think it's fair to say there's almost nothing to care about. But also, I kind of have a problem with current healers. And that is that every expansion, they get so many tools to deal with every single issue that you never have to think beyond, okay, there is a damage profile coming in like 5 seconds. I have a square tool and I'm going to put it in the square hole. There we go, problem solved. And you never think beyond that. Even in a prog scenario, you never think beyond that. I'd say the only scenario that you think any further or any deeper is potentially in like high tier speedruns, right? And what I'm kind of hoping for next expansion is that instead of just giving us, oh, here's 2 extra healing tools, enjoy, now your healers never have to GCD, I'm really hoping that instead of doing that, for all of the jobs, they instead give us some interesting utility and some wacko tobacco stuff. Like, I remember Kareth has mentioned in the past having Scholar be able to swap place with its fairy, right? Or also, why does only Sage have a gap closer? Why don't they all have a gap closer or a jump to party member or something like that, right?
True.
I feel like making the jobs more interesting and kind of differentiating them from one another is really essential to make healing a little bit more fun, in my opinion.
So you just said, just make sure I heard that right. Making them all different and unique, but why don't they all have a charge and jump around utility?
Well, the charge is fun, right?
Okay.
That's why I want them all to have that. I want them to be able to jump around. I love mobility in this game. It's hilarious.
Yeah,
it's just things like the dash, right? Like it's very like I don't know, like coming from we're gonna boomer, all right, it's coming. So coming from Stormblood healing, right?
We're only like, are you serious?
I mean, I could talk about like Heaven's Ward too if you want, but like I feel like Stormblood's really emblematic because there was like only one healer that was like sleeper, right? Which was like White Mage, right? Which is funny enough, like kind of how all the healers work now. Like it felt different going from like Scholar to Astro, but like there's almost no difference between the jobs outside of like increasingly niche scenarios. And I feel like for a role like healing, it's kind of important that they feel different. At
Okay.
least, I don't know, man. They
Well-
suck. I fucking hate
The
them.
the Endwalker also introduced one of the core changes, which is like pretty controversial, I think, in terms of like how each side of player base feels about it. Because like the hardcore players are gonna be like, you know, it's kind of whatever, but it's like really, it was really good for like a casual side. But the 1.5-second cast time implementation was like, that was like a very big change in how healers played. And for like Astrologian, it made sense, right? Like to have a 1.5-second cast time. But like once you implemented that, like every healer became like, there was like no downside to using your healing tools. Like before, you had to kind of like plan where to put stuff, like into like your dot windows or forcing a swift cast window or like whatever. But like now that doesn't exist. You just kind of press buttons and weave stuff in between, which is good, I think, for like the majority of the player base, right? But it does dumb down the ceiling a little bit, which I think a lot of the hardcore players didn't like, and one of the reasons why a lot of them switched off in the first place. Because like even in Shadowbringers, like Scholar was like, it wasn't like a Stormblood, right? But like there was still like a lot of optimization you could do to kind of like circumvent like some of the fun back into it. But yeah, I mean, it's the same with White Mage. White Mage was actually kind of fun too to optimize back in Shadowbringers. But
White
yeah,
Mage Shadowbringers was as good as it ever got.
yeah,
Yeah, you had to work really hard in order to get your tools out and be able to move to the next mechanic. Whereas nowadays, it just kind of, it happens naturally, right? You get a weave window with every GCD, you don't have to think about it. You get a movement window with every GCD, and you don't have to think about it. But the problem is there's nothing in place of that, so the fun has gone down.
Yeah, like slide casting no longer has any value for the most part. Like that was like a slide casting was like one of the core skills that you had to learn as a healer before Endwalker, and if you didn't learn it, you were bad, right? Like you were a bad healer. But like now you don't, like you have no reason to really learn how to slide cast unless you play like Black Mage or something.
No, that's a really good point. Again, being a Sage main, I don't think about movement at all. I just move.
Yeah, I mean, even if like yeah, like there's no need to learn how to slide cast properly anymore.
Yeah.
Like you can still learn how to do it, and like you'll like be better for it. But like there's no skill disparity between like two players that know how to and don't know how to.
Okay. Well, I mean that is interesting. Do you feel like that was something? I know it seems like your opinion on it, and a lot of other people seem to share that opinion a bit. But the people who don't watch the show, I guess, the people who are a little bit more casual, the people who are just kind of playing healers to play it, they probably love this change, right?
Well, I think it's good. I think it's needed. I mean, it was. I mean, I don't know if it was needed, but I think it's a good change overall. Because I mean, even like in a isolated like friends group, like it's obvious that like more people want to play healer because it's just more accessible now.
So that is something that I do want to go over a little bit. Healing, it feels like there are more healers out there. Again, I know, just to be clear, I do a lot of Party Finder, and so and I am kind of in a biased point of when I join a party, I am the healer, so I usually join parties pretty fast. I'm usually waiting on like physical ranged and like magical ranged more than anything else. I feel like healers fill up a lot faster than they used to, so I do agree kind of to your point. It seems like there's a handful more healers out there playing the game now. Am I wrong in that assumption? Rinon, Kareth, do you guys feel like there's an increase in people who are healing now?
I think there's just more people that are playing the game in general, but I mean, it feels roughly the same for me personally. I mean, I haven't like looked at the log counts and then also looked at like the player populations between expansions and see like, you know, like proportionately has it gone up. But whenever I join on Dragoon, unless it's 10, I'm always waiting on healers. If it's 10, you're waiting on tanks.
Okay.
You're always waiting on tanks for 10 every time.
You know, I don't know if I share that same experience so far, but I could see it. Do you think the towers really killed tanks that much?
I think the towers
are
are
the
funny.
best part.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're the best part of 10. I'm so excited when I get to tank P10.
Like I know this isn't a point of the show, but like fights like 10 really like could make healing fun. Like despite the way healing is, like having a fight that not only has mechanics like the thing, but like more importantly, have mechanics that people die to in funny ways can make anything fun,
Yeah.
including healing. Like,
Yeah, just in general, 10 is the one I'm most excited to do every single week. I love 10. I love healing it. I love healing it with random people. Um, I feel like 10 is maybe the best fight in the entire game. I know that's a take, right? But it is near perfect, and it has so many little aspects of it that makes it a fun, interesting fight. With all the extra frustrations, there's so much that a healer can do in that fight when things go wrong. And so I feel like they did a really good job with that. But I have been talking, to a handful of players. Overall, most people say they hate 11, right? Or not hate it, just they're mad about it. They don't really care about it. It's boring. DPS wise, you're just kind of sitting there, and then every once in a while, mechanic happens. But when you're dealing with a party finder that's fucking up all the time, healing is fun in that fight too. And so, I don't know exactly where I'm going with this, but I'm putting a lot of party finder bias in this, just because I know you guys do a lot of static stuff, and so I'm trying to explain it in a way of healing seems to be really fun when people are all messing up all the time.
I mean, I think it's like healing is like tightly coupled with encounter design in a way that other roles maybe not so much because of the amount of like quote unquote recovery tools healers have or supposedly like have, right? Um, and so on fights that like actually permit usages of those, like healing can be fun. Like finding good ways to use them and saving pools.
Mhm.
Though, I mean, I feel like, obviously, I don't know for sure, but like, I feel like increasingly there's more 8 out of 8 body checks in like
Mhm.
more recent content than there was before. So I'm not certain that I'm getting that from really getting that as from fights as much as I'd like.
Okay. Um, well, I guess when we were talking about 10 in particular, that has some really hard checks where people either stack or they don't stack and they all die, right? And then I think a lot of teams just took up the sack strat where they just throw the guy who got the roll stack off the side and res him afterwards. Um, but I don't know. There's I feel like there's a misconception with things that you can recover versus what you can't recover in Party Finder. But maybe I'm wrong on that. Do you feel like most of the stuff there isn't like enough stuff that you could actually recover from that is just a hard check, you just die?
I mean, like obviously, with extremely niche circumstances, you can recover almost any mechanic. Like even a mechanic where Square Enix obviously intended for you to die. So like the shapes in P12, P2.
Mm-hmm.
If you move at just the right time and the right speed, a player can take 2 tethers during classical and eat both shapes and save the raid. But
Mm-hmm.
it's obviously not their intention, and I feel like a lot of mechanics are designed like classical, right? Like, and if not designed like it, designed to almost certainly slowly guarantee the end of the raid. So, like 9, I think the majority of the mechanics in that fight will like it's basically a gotcha game on whether or not like if you go into like the Protean or the partners with like 7 people,
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of like praying that the people or a person that dies from that is like not the healer, and that's
Yeah.
not tested. Like the recovery solution for that isn't are you a good healer? It's are you lucky? Like
Yeah, that's
did
true.
you win the gamble? Like
Yeah, yeah. That kind of sucks too. I wish there was some way to control that. I feel like that is a really horrible feeling when just randomly someone gets an extra mechanic and dies.
I feel like it's almost like a direct result to the fact that maybe like Stormblood, maybe the start of Shadowbringers, but in the past there were so many encounters where both res cheesing and hyper mitigating were so overpowered in terms of dealing with a mechanic, and they were like, okay, we don't want people to do this anymore, so we're gonna add binary body checks to as much things as possible. And that kind of takes a lot of agency away from healing, because you can salvage like the micro things, but the macro things are going to go to shit 90% of the time, no matter what, if something goes wrong, right? And it removes a decent chunk of what makes you feel really good about saving a pull as a healer, just because you can do it less often. Because let's say somebody messes up classical and you see the tethers lock in, you can't be like, okay, I'm gonna pop everything and we'll live. You're just like, okay, it's over, next pull, we move on. And then that feels like a bit of a paradigm shift from the way FF used to be like 5 years ago, right? And I haven't decided which one I prefer yet, but it's definitely a bit of a marked change at the very least.
From the perspective of healing, I don't really like it at all. Like, I do agree that, maybe completely nullifying Earthquake during 09S makes Scholar a little bit too powerful, but it does make it really fun. I think Momo knows exactly what I'm talking about, where you can like remove all the debuffs and the dot just by like having enough mit for like 09, and there were other mechanics that were similar. And like that kind of tech, like that's what got me into healing, right? And so like when Shadowbringers happened and like slowly they peeled away from it, I think that's when the jaded Kareth arc began. And because you know what, I feel robbed. I feel robbed, Frosty. Okay.
Okay, that's fair. I wasn't
me
robbed
more
because I just started
feedback.
healing like last tier, so.
That is true. Yeah, can't miss what you never had.
Yeah, well, I mean, I
Yeah,
healed Midas, but that was a long time ago.
I guess like to talk about it a little more, it was kind of like a case of skill expression, right? Because doing those things were not easy to do. You would need to plan your entire party mitigation around being able to invalidate these mechanics. And it's the same way that, okay, I'm gonna be like a Stormblood boomer person again. The way that in Stormblood, Scholar also had DPS skill expression, right? Because they had Miasma too, and it was a risk reward. You would sacrifice mana and potential safety in order to get more DPS. And I really feel like skill expression is a big thing that's missing from not just healers, but a lot of jobs in the game right now, since they've become more homogenized. And skill expression is what makes higher end players have a better time with the game, at least the way I feel about it. And I guess that's kind of what I'm hoping for next expansion. I'm hoping that while they've made all these changes this expansion to make the game more fun for the like more entry player and make everything a bit more easy to get into, I'm hoping that we can keep that and also get some more ways to have interesting skill expression next expansion, because I think that would make healing a lot more fun.
I think it also benefits, people that might not still be as hardcore. Because, like, I guess, like, to clarify, like, just because someone's casual doesn't mean that they don't enjoy improvement, right? Like, they can still very much enjoy. They might just not have the time, or they might enjoy other types of content more, right? But like, there's plenty of people, that I know, that only put like a few hours a week into this game, but they still enjoy, like becoming better DPS wise on the jobs they play and whatnot. And so having DPS skill expression for healers, I feel like gives it a bit more sticking power when it comes to like player entertainment and retention that is present in some other jobs but not healers.
I think it's funny because Astro has a lot of skill expression in its current state when it comes to like how you play it. But the issue with Astrologian is that you will not get that fulfillment unless you have a static, but not just a static. It has to be like a fairly optimized static, which like I would say like 95% of the player base does not have access to. So like they made a job that's like really fun and really engaging, not only from like a DPS perspective, but from a team perspective too. Like just the way the toolkit works, like Macrocosmos is like one of those abilities in the game that just gives you full control of like how you use it. And there's like so many ways you can use it, not just for like healing, but for like movement and damage too. Like there's so much you can do with it. But like CU, star timings, horoscope timings, like there's so much on that job. But I do feel like it's just like one of those things where it's like, how do you make a healer feel, I guess, engaging and rewarding in its current state that's like not centered around party focus, because I don't think you can.
I don't think you can either, but I can definitely. I don't think it's a binary, right? I think there could be mitigative factors to pull it like to give you more individual agency in those tools, like
Yeah.
I guess like DPS scholars like in Stormblood, right? Like you could still have fun optimizing your damage in Party Finder. It just was like a matter of magnitude how much you got out of it, right? Like obviously you get a lot more enjoyment in static, but like it was still there in partial form in like the nightmare times when like you were peeling people off the floor constantly.
I'll let you know I'm peeling people off the floor all the time. The only downside is that when you're in Party Finder, most people don't understand how recoverable things are, and when some people die, they all just run into the wall. But like, I feel like, for example, one of the big things the memes is Bonds 3 is healer limit break 3, right? As soon as that happens, to recover, like if 2 people die, do you res those 2 people? Do you have 2 people that can res them quick enough? If 3 people die, you have to hit healer LB3 in order to get past the next mechanic almost immediately. And there's some things that just like line up that makes me think that there is a lot more thought coming down to how these fights are designed for healers in a prog atmosphere. But I don't know. I think that I'm talking with veterans right now, and I'm just a little sprout when it comes to healing.
I don't disagree that they designed fights. I don't know about for prog specifically, but we do know they designed fights with like healers in mind, because they are very adamant on the fact that they don't want healers to feel any more demanding in certain spots than like a DPS or tank, which is why like during like heavy mechanics there's no healing. It's just like you're just another player on the field at that point when there's like a major mechanic happening. Like they kind of purposely design stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's I'm trying to think. I keep going to P10. I constantly, like, literally 50% of my time awake in the last month or so has been like P10. So like I keep thinking about that fight over and over again, and how I've found to like try to optimize a couple different things in there. I mean, just like the healing that goes into certain spots, like the turrets, for example, the tank being hit back and forth and trying to make sure they're topped off in the right way, just finding where you can place these abilities when they're getting hit with the towers, the dots are taking over, and then the mitigation the tanks are using, and when they're going to have mitigation versus when they're not going to have mitigation. And there's just so much that you have to really think about. Again, I'm thinking about this in like just RNG. Will the player actually hit their buttons, and how do I recover that situation? But you guys have set situations when you're progging with your group, right, that you're all kind of familiar with too.
Well, when you prog, you should definitely prog with the idea of fault tolerance. Like, never assume that, like, even if you're playing with the best players in the world, eventually they're going to miss an addle or something, right? And at that point, like, you don't want your mitt and prog to be so finely tuned that like a 10% makes or breaks a mechanic.
Yeah. I feel like healing right now, when everyone knows what they're doing, is absolutely miserable and the worst thing in the game. But I don't know if you guys feel that same way too.
I think it's just like any other job, to be honest.
Yeah.
I feel like all of the jobs are kind of like that because I think we talked about it before, right? They're so kind of homogenized, and the damage profiles are so it's difficult to make a damage profile that nobody's seen before. So nowadays it's like, okay, you see this incoming damage, there's 2 raid wides. You're like, okay, we just do the same thing as X fight. We just do the same thing as Y fight. There we go, no more thought, we're done. And it's difficult to really give an insane amount of damage that is going to make everybody have to pay attention and be on their toes all of the time, because then the players that are not quite as practiced are going to have a really, really bad time of it, right? So I think it's very hard to make it super engaging all of the time, so it just ends up being the way it is, right?
Well, at least you're pressing other buttons besides one with the other jobs, right?
True.
So that's the big difference.
To be clear, in an optimized environment, hitting 1 instead of 2 tactically, like, doesn't make any, like, physical difference.
I was gonna say the exact same thing.
all jobs are the same in Opti at this point, and that's like a broader discussion, I guess, of like how Square Enix, like, has been slowly
Mhm.
eroding, like, complexities across the board, not just in healers. I think it's just most visible in healers, I guess, right?
Right. Right. Um.
You're gonna
Good.
find that more often. Like you're just like I think the newer player will probably be like, oh my god, DPS is so much more fun than healer. But like once you play a lot more, like once you open yourself up to like a lot more roles and you experience like every role for what it is, it's like sure, like okay, when you're first learning a job, like oh my god, it's really fun. Like monk, black mage, like actually black mage is probably an exception. Monk, like ninja, dragoon, like they all like have like their own niche stuff when you're learning it. But like once you learn a job, you could like browse Twitter on the side and like probably not mess up. Like it doesn't become it becomes the same thing as like a healer. You're just pressing more buttons for the same effect.
I mean, I think that's the same for, although whether they're in a static environment or not, most DPS, they don't do anything different ever once they figure out a fight, right? They do exactly the same thing. They don't ever have to react to anything. Same thing with tanks. I mean, you could do a cover play or some kind of goofy stuff every once in a while with a tank, but you don't really get too much of that, right? Healers are the only ones that have those reaction tools. Or am I wrong on that?
I mean, in optimization, you don't use, like, everything has a spot. I would say, like, I guess there's probably some flexibility with
Mhm.
some fights with maybe the Astro tools, like specifically their single target tools. But like the moment you need to build LB Jin, like all your tools are like going out the window to build LB.
That's like
And
the 0.0001% that's worrying about that, though, right?
well, okay, but yes, but like with healers being as like so what Momo said is true. Like at the
Mhm.
end, all jobs are effectively the same after
Right.
you've gotten them down. But like the road to that point for healers, I feel is like really short comparatively speaking. And
Yes.
that like so for a job, your personal progression path, right, might be, I don't know, we'll just contrive number here, a month, right? But a healer, it might be like 2 weeks instead. And the reason is that there's more things for you to do. And as a result, healers often when they do optimization find themselves faced with increasingly niche and like honestly kind of insane things you have to do to optimize.
Mm-hmm.
Like it should not be a conversation that like yes, it is sometimes a DPS increase to hit a macro that says broil 15 times in a row. And no, I will not explain on the stream why that is sometimes the case. But like it, and that's like my gripe with healer, right? Like I don't expect the content to like keep me entertained indefinitely. I
Mm-hmm.
just it is just like so worn down that I feel bad for anyone getting into healing because like if you got a static Frosty,
Mm-hmm.
it would be so over for you. I feel like
Well, I
coming from
do
PF, you would be so bored. Like
technically I do have a static for top only, um, and I'm healing with them. Uh, although that fight's just mechanically it keeps you mentally engaged the entire time. And then when you start to fall asleep, then you have to wake back up again because you'll die to something. So
I feel like ultimates really highlight a lot of issues with healing design too, just different ones.
I mean,
The way
ultimates.
that the oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna chime in with like ultimate has less healing checks than Savage in terms of like the duration, right? Like Savage fights generally like 8 to 10 minutes, but there's more healing checks in those than a like 18-minute ultimate fight.
No, but you see, Yoshi P made the number bigger, and you have to use more tools to live
Yeah,
certain AoEs. So
like
it's
mitigation
it's
checks.
really extremely engaging healing, hitting
Yeah,
two
yeah.
blue buttons instead of one. Okay,
Your
like it's
mandated
huge.
60-second raid wide is coming in, lads. Hit the buttons. There we go. Okay,
Yeah,
back to
That
111.
it goes, yeah, it goes back to the point I was saying before though. Like they purposely design mechanics with healing in mind because like you'll generally never have a hard mechanic to do where there's like a lot of healing, right? Like the hardest mechanic in that fight to heal is probably Hello World in terms of just like outgoing damage.
and
And
it's
even
been
then,
made a little bit easier now with the range too. But yeah.
oh yeah, yeah. But even then, it's just like it's literally just mitigate, heal in between, and that's it. Like just even if you want to like dumb it down to the simplest, like each healer uses 1 GCD for every like healing mechanic, like every pop of damage, then it's already like kind of like solved, right? Like 1 shield, one heal, 1 shield per AoE, and you're kind of just like done. And then you just add like the off GCD tools in between.
Yeah.
I don't think this fixes the issue, but it would be nice to see like more variations, not in like specifically damage frequency, and potentially giving players some agency in when the damage comes out. So what I mean by this is Garuda phase in Ultima. That's what I mean by this really is like Garuda being able to basically decide when the damage goes out in that phase actually creates marginally more interesting healing scenarios than like top, right? Where it's like you see the P6 timeline, and like within 30 seconds, I guarantee your healers like have something figured out that will get you through the door, right? Like whereas like with Garuda giving them more agency in the frequency of the damage, you might actually, not you might miss the optimal path immediately and like want to revisit it later on.
Well, the Hello World kind of has that a little bit too, I guess, with the breaking of tethers, right? When you're gonna let that damage roll out, but it's still within, I guess, that same window. It's not the exact same comparison, but I don't know. I feel so weird about this too, because I am absolutely like bright-eyed and just like in love with healing right now. And I don't know. It's so hard for me to talk. This is one of those shows where like I feel bad saying my thoughts on it because I'm like I don't know if I have the right to say it at the same time.
No,
But
the new player perspective is absolutely valid, and you shouldn't be ashamed of
Yeah.
enjoying something that other people might not because they've been doing it for like 8 years, right? Like
Yeah,
So-
I feel like literally all of us probably had that exact same experience, which is why we play healers and why we wish that they were maybe in slightly a better spot so we could reclaim a spark of our previous enjoyment, you know?
I'm telling you guys, go in a party finder. Heal a party finder. It is a masochistic like satisfaction of some sort when you're just presented with just random people dying to stupid things and you're like, is there a way we can get everybody back to 100%? Yeah, you guys have experienced that in the past, I'm sure, but it is finding like and learning these fights too. For example, there's a handful of positions in P11 where I've just seen people die just randomly to like mechanics. I'm like, do I have time to res these people, or do I, what's the choice? Do I get them up really quick, or do I heal everyone to full for the next raid wide? What's the next mechanic? And knowing the fights and overall figuring out the little holes of when you can repair the situation and what's the best way to do it. And if you're going to have a body check in a second, if there's no way you can get past it unless if you res somebody, if you and also chat just brought up dark and light. Do you res this party finder member in dark and light, or do you wait to put out that res because they're going to hit it automatically and kill somebody? Right?
There's no way you trust party finder with that.
So
you do not raise them before you see that AoE. That is,
yeah,
you are trolling if you raise them before that raid white goes.
Yeah, it is so interesting to me right now to kind of figure out how I can react to someone making a mistake and how the fight's going to work. And it can't always be someone died immediately, res them immediately. Same thing with P10. If someone walks off the platform while you guys are going across the web, you gotta wait till you get over to the other side for the timing of that and everything else. But then you have a raid wide that's going to happen right afterwards as well, right? So is your other healer doing anything? Are they doing anything to mitigate that bleed that's coming up? Do you have to hard cast because you already res someone else? I don't know. Just little things that have to go through your brain pretty quickly, or else, you could wipe over stuff. And that feels enjoyable to me right now, and that's why I'm loving healing so much in Party Finder. But you guys don't have any interest in ever doing that again, it sounds like, from what I've heard from you guys before.
I feel like going into the PF mines on healer is my start of expansion training arc, because there's one thing that PFing on healer is really good for, and it's when you're kind of out of practice, it's a really good tool in order to get you back in practice and making up for other people's mistakes in prog. And I do that at like the start of every expansion for like a month or two, because I find it a really good like practicing tool. But there comes a point where that kind of gets old, right? And at that point, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm done outside of prog now. I'm playing other jobs.
Fair. I don't know. I feel like every job, like you guys were talking about, it gets over optimized, and when you get into any rating scenario at all, the only one that has some sort of randomness to it would be healing Party Finder. Nothing else has any kind of like random part of mechanics. It's all a dance that you execute the exact same way every single time. Is how it seems like, at least to me. But yeah, no, it can get kind of old, just walling a fight over and over and over again. And just rezzing people constantly is the same thing. After you get it completely figured out, I guess maybe it's not that big of a deal. I mean, they throw stuff like in there, like the Asunas, right? I guess. I don't know how you guys feel about the 2 fights that have something to be Asuna'd.
Yeah, I'll tell you how I feel about it. Sir went bard, and I don't hit the button. And, unlucky, they didn't put enough of them in, I guess.
Oh. Again, in Party Finder, you might need to do more than one Asuna in P10.
On my PF healing arc. I'll sometimes do it on my alts, because on my alt, like off stream, I'll sometimes PF on healer, but it's not as enjoyable as it used to be.
Yeah. I mean, Asuna is not engaging. It's just something you're like, hey, is someone about to mess up? Let me just look and see if someone messes up, and then fix it really quick if someone messes up. There's not too much. And Crush Helm, I think, again, just so you guys know, I'm still progging P12 in part. Like, I've done all of my prog in Party Finder. Did that last tier. I'm doing it this tier as well. And it's miserable. But I'm on P12, and I'm on Pangenesis. And I see the Crush Helm mechanic with a paladin covering the other guy. And that is the current. I don't know if that's like the current meta paladins are using in that, but they just hollow ground it and just cover the other guy.
That's
the
funny.
entire mechanic. Which is maybe their one moment to shine and support. I don't know. I don't know, but it's such a tight little window to hit, and it feels just like they're doing it so they have an excuse for the spell to still exist.
Okay, niche ramble really quick.
Sure.
And maybe Rinon and Momo will agree with me here. But like, there was actually an interesting use for Asuna briefly in T. Because like it was like back when you had the old cast, right? You had the old cast time, but Asuna was still a fast cast. And so you could use it in T for throttles to weave things. And that was actually kind of cool and fun and neat.
Yeah, I think there's also applications in EAS where you'd use Asuna to optimize, since they give you that free space.
Really?
Yeah.
It's
Where
a
would you
really
assume it?
fast cast.
Diamond Frost.
Yeah, you have to.
I can't remember. I only tank that. But I can't even remember anything about Asuna. Maybe Party Finder just did an Asuna in there.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the Asunas in the P12 or whatever would probably feel a lot better with the old cast time, considering like you probably like do some funky stuff based around like what weaves you were doing at the time. But yeah, now like it's just like an outdated system now.
Yeah, it used to feel kind of good because you'd feel like you sacrificed a GCD that you'd gain a weave slot or something that you could use to get an ED in, get an off global, something like that. Whereas now it's just like, well, there goes a GCD. Oh well, moving on. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much it. I mean, you have to cast it at the exact GCD that you need to do it, or the dude's dead, right?
They can live with one stack if they hit all their mit, right?
Yeah, again. So yeah, I just don't deal with people who do their stuff right currently. Like I'm currently in the mindset, and I haven't thought about it in a while, is that everyone I play with is I expect them to fail, constantly. Um, but yeah, no, okay. So we've talked a lot about it, and the direction it seems like they're going with healing from this conversation so far is more of simplification overall of the job, right? And trying to make it easier for new players to get in and start healing and not make it so scary. And would you feel like that's the generalization, a good general statement to say about the direction they're taking healing with Endwalker?
I'd say it's probably a good statement for almost every job in general. I think mentioned before, probably Black Mage is the only exception. It's maybe the only job that hasn't been intentionally simplified and made very much into a plug and play job that you can apply to most situations. So yeah, I think it's pretty fair to say, yeah.
I,
Yeah.
you know
Why do a
that
lot of
thing
bad players play Black Mage, do you think?
because they've seen a good
Se-
player play Black Mage.
Yeah, serotonin, funny number. It looks cool. It feels cool when you do it right. Like,
It's like the only real caster as well. Like, I mean,
Okay, that's fair.
I mean, like, okay, so I know you don't like it when people say that Square Enix doesn't play their own game on this show, so I'm not going to say that, right? Okay. But
They do play
it
their
is,
game.
yeah,
They
I'm
do.
sure. I'm sure they have someone very lovely playing the healers or something. But it's very clear that whoever that lovely person is, or persons, or who's ever like in charge of the job design, sure as hell doesn't like it, or at the very least, isn't as invested as whoever, really anyone, it could be a guess, is leading the Black Mage design, right?
You mean
Like,
Yoshida?
yeah,
It's like playing
you don't
Black
know.
Mage.
It could be anyone. It could be anyone.
I think the
Um,
thing about healers, I mean, it's probably, I don't know. It feels like, I mean, they design it right because they don't design it for people who play the game for like more than like probably like a couple hours a week. So like they don't want, I don't know, they don't want to like make too much of like a time investment for it probably.
Mm-hmm.
but it exists with Black Mage. Like that like optional level of like
I think Black
commitment
Mage is like a
there.
mistake. I think they don't
Okay.
they don't intentionally like make it as hard as it is, right? I think that's, I mean, okay,
Okay, but like,
we can laugh, but like that's a real thing that happens in this game. Like
Okay.
they unintentionally make things harder than like they design them to be, right? Like they don't mean to make things hard a lot of the times, right? Because they end up going back and like neutering it or like changing it to make it more simplified.
But-
And it's just something that it's a real thing, and it's probably happening in the Black Mage where it's just like they don't intentionally like make it hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the intentional solution is probably like the standard Black Mage rotation where you just
yeah,
fire
100%.
ice. Like they don't like, I mean, maybe it's
Okay.
hard to say with like the like paradox, right? Because paradox is like the solution to like old Black Mage tech.
But they fix other. Okay, so when Liz releases a video on Monk for the 12th time, right, and finds an unintended way to play it, they fix it like within the like next patch cycle or two, generally, right? I can't recall the last time Black Mage was unfun to play, right? I so it's that lack of like action against that job that isn't present in the other jobs that makes me think, like it's not a mistake. Obviously, it could be, right? I guess we don't know, but there's not a similar level of action.
You guys could ask Yoshida at FanFest.
I'm not going to FanFest.
Oh,
Only thing worse than playing healer is being close to Final Fantasy players.
damn! Jesus Christ! All right. Okay. So the other thing, goddamn, the other thing to talk about with, man, are you? Hold on. I gotta drill in this real quick. Momo, are you going to FanFest? No.
No.
Okay, so I'm the only one going to FanFest here. Rinon, are you going to go to the EU one?
I'm not going to any of them though.
All right, guys. I'll ask Yoshida when I'm there. I'll see. I'll see what he says. The other thing with Endwalker, healing wise, changing, making stuff easier, is that they also went away from the statement of not having, letting healers be kind of all be able to play together, right? You still kind of can, but they did separate it and do a pretty hard cut barrier healers versus pure healing. Do you feel like that change with this expansion as well was a good change and the direction they should have taken now that we're kind of through it again?
Honestly, maybe other people would disagree, but I kind of feel like it was a performative change more than anything, because in actuality, it didn't change all that much at all. Like, aside from removing Shield Healer from Astro, which I suppose they were probably going to do anyway, I feel like it was very much a very surface level change that hasn't really affected the paradigm of healing or what kind of jobs you'd pick together. At least that's the way I feel about it.
I mean, you wouldn't really pick White Mage and Astro together, would you?
Probably not, but in most cases you wouldn't be for. Well, not all cases, but in most cases you wouldn't be for, right? I feel like nowadays, how to say it? There's still definitely an argument for taking two shield healers. Put it that way, right? There's definitely an argument for taking Sage Scholar in certain situations. So it's definitely not been universally cut and removed or anything like that.
Right.
And maybe depending on if they ever decide to do interesting damage profiles that don't rely on one shots, maybe there'll be an argument for taking White Mage Astro at some point. I'm not sure that's true. That might be copium, but there could be a world in which that's true as well.
I mean, it's ironic that the meta went from, because back in Shadowbringers, the meta for like a lot of these fights was White Mage Astro, and it's ironic that the meta switch for like if you're gonna bring a double healer, it's gonna be double shield now instead of double regen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, they encouraged the separation though. All right. They encourage it by putting something in Party Finder that literally says this is your barrier healer, this is your pure healer. They put that clear cut in there. So when you're like recruiting or you're looking for other people, is that you're looking for that combo with a shield and a pure healer, to making that as sort of a statement. It's not required, but they're moving that type of language within the overall community, are they not?
I think the change was probably just for PF. Thinking about it for a moment, because like the only time where I could see doubling up be an issue is like if you're in a scenario where you might actually have to make words at the other person to make sure you're not hitting the same buttons at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah, it helps avoid like the double shield overlap or something like that.
See, and the problem with that too is that they don't make it clear, very clear to a lot of the players, that Sage and Scholar will run into those issues, and you don't experience it until you raid with one of them, and you're like, man, this feels horrible, I don't want to do it, and you might not even know why, unless if you're a player who puts a lot of time into researching the interactions of different abilities. So I think for the general player base, they're just like, it just doesn't work. But if you are paying a lot of attention to it, yeah, Sage and Scholar can work well, but you have to work to not step on each other's toes.
Yeah, I mean, I think someone said earlier, it's just the fact that you don't have to communicate. Like, White Mage Astro is like so troll for Party Finder. Like, you're just kind of like actively griefing if you ran that in PF. Like, nobody like having any communication skills whatsoever.
Yeah.
It doesn't really happen with Scholar Sage. Like, sure, it can be annoying sometimes, but like, you're not really putting your group at a detriment outside of like maybe HPS checks, which don't exist outside like carrying hell. So,
I mean, technically, the same thing with shielding over each other happens with pure healing, anyways, right? Like between two regular healers, is like if they're casting their pure heal abilities all both at the same time and over healing, then they're doing the same thing as if a Scholar and a Sage shielded over each other.
Well, it's a lot harder to overheal on shield healers and pure healers. Like, sure, like, yeah, technically, like, yeah, I mean, Scholar, Sucker, and your Crazy Prognosis will, like, override each other, but it's like, I mean, your heals are more efficient on shield healers, and they always have been.
Yeah, and what I
Usually,
mean is that they're not that they're going to like cancel each other out in the same way, but the fact that once you get hit 100, all the extra regen
Yeah.
you're doing, all that other stuff is meaningless. So you are technically canceling it out by getting the full before you need to get the full.
It's but
yeah,
okay, but
usually like overwriting and losing a GCD is the least of your problems in PF. So as long as you've hit all the mitigation requirements and everything, which is easier to do with double shield, then
Hmm.
it's not really a problem, right? Because if you're gonna hit enrage, there's a much bigger problem than an overwritten shield kind of thing.
Yeah.
for like Astro though, like there's certain like committal abilities that like a white mage could ruin. Like like absolutely destroy. Like you put star on the ground and then you see planary appear on your buff bar and you know it's over. Like that star is healing nothing.
Hmm.
It's one of the reasons why Astro sucks in Party Finder. It's like one of the most. I mean, I could go on for like an hour about Astro, but it's like one of the most unfriendly player jobs in the entire game, because like not only does it require pretty much like third party programs to even play properly, like not even just from like a damage point of view, but from like a timer point of view. Like it's ridiculous that like there's not like an in-game like timer of sorts to like play around. Um,
You
but
mean when a
like
fight starts, like countdown fight is engaged as time, and then
like a timer, like the ones that
I
third
think
party
count your
programs have.
timer maybe, you know?
Yeah, that's what, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like
I mean, you
how
could
is,
do that.
How is
All
it
you have to do
year
is look
10?
at the duty, look at the duty timer, and then just like do the math in your head and subtract. You know
Well,
how long
most
it's
players who don't use like programs just use like boss animations, right? Which is fine. Like it's it's appropriate like solution, but like it's a scuff solution compared to like something like a timer, right? But the thing about, I mean, year 10 by the way. Why don't we have an in-game timer for fights? Anyways,
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those things where Astro's healing toolkit requires so much foresight that a lot of players in Party Finder will just like make it like overheal, right? Like Kareth said, so many times, like not even just like a white mage, right? With like a scholar and sage too, you'll place a star down and the scholar will put like Whispering Dawn up, or like the sage will just like Numa, and then like your star is just completely overheal, right? And Astro's toolkit's like full of that too, because like same thing with Macrocosmos, right? You do Macrocosmos for a mechanic, and then either the the shield healer will just like shield, which makes your macro heal for less now after the hit, or like maybe like a scholar will like deplay out of nowhere, and then now that macro that heals for like 30k is only gonna heal for like 10k because like you didn't take enough damage to like really like proc that effect. Like there's so many like cases where Astro's toolkit just, there's like a timing aspect to it that is just not friendly with the like current like dichotomy between the other healers in like a random environment.
Well, I mean, like, I guess there's the question. This goes into another broader conversation. Is like, do you need it to be? Do you want things to always be that friendly, or do you want there to actually be some? Hey, you need base level knowledge to be efficient in the game.
I mean, I'm just more so speaking the fact that like how I guess unfriendly Astro is compared to like something like White
Yeah,
Mage, which just
there's a
sort of
big
heals out.
discrepancy there.
Yeah,
Like a lot of these jobs, especially if we talk about White Mage and Sage more than anything else, they're very much you get a square problem and you put the square in the square hole, right? Whereas Astro, you need to know what you're doing like 30, 60 seconds in advance in order to plan it out. And then it's so easy to be ruined by the other guy because they can easily just like cancel out your pre-planned healing. And then because you have used your instance there, you've planned all your instance out there, and they pop for nothing. And the other guy has also done that. That means you're both resorting to using GCDs on the next problem because instead of him working around your plan, which took a lot more time than him, say, pressing Indom, you're now both kind of out of tools and in a bit of a bad situation that you then need to deal with by sacrificing GCDs, which is kind of not what you want to do. You know, it's kind of the point of what you're avoiding to do if you don't have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I again going back to Party Finder, I heal as if I'm the only healer in that party. And so I'm constantly stepping on my other healer's toes, I'm sure, every single moment of these fights. And so when it, yeah, you're right with Astro, with having the time all this stuff up and trying to get it like, at a certain point, where everyone pops up really quick. I guess you would have to time it in a way that would not scare the other healer into healing in a way, right? That's the only way I could think you could really do it, but I'm trying to. I don't know Astro enough to know if the timings would work out well with that or not.
I mean, you could look at their buff bar and figure out the latest that their star could pop, assuming you're familiar enough with the fight timeline. But I think like it's just a matter of like FF14 and like so healers are naturally like a cooperatively they're more tied to like the cooperation aspect of FF14 than the other jobs. But like PF exists, right? And in PF there are like the creatures of the night, the like zero healing like, you know, white mage players and whatever. And so in PF you have to take an individualistic approach to healing, which is like bad, but it gets you through PF, right? It will get you through PF, and it's something that you kind of like develop, and then but on the flip side, like if you ever don't PF, if the healers are geared for individualistic approaches, you lose that cooperation aspect that makes healing sometimes so fun. And I think it like, you know, to Momo's credit, it's very strange how in the cooperative basket Astro is compared to the other healers, right? Like there's no it would be nice if like that type of ability set was like more evenly distributed between all four jobs, right?
Yeah,
Would you also almost argue, but that gives it sort of a unique flavor to it, or no? Is that not a good unique?
Well, the issue with Astro is that Astro, like literally outside GCT heals, has no like direct healing in a sense. Like there's no tool in their toolkit. Like CO, CU are all HOTS, right? Those two are HOTS. Horoscope, macro, star are all timed abilities, right? They don't really have something like Cure 3 Plenary that they just use and then boom, you're healed, right? Like every single one of their like huge AoE healing tools are in essential they're all HOTS in the sense that like there's something that you need to time or use before a mechanic actually happens. And when you don't have that cooperation effect, there's nothing you can do about it. Like you're just like shit out of luck. Like like White Mage and Scholar, even Sage, I guess in a sense, all have like those abilities, right? Like Whispering Dawn, Asylum, like Physis 2, like they're all abilities that you have to use to like ahead of a mechanic or like ahead of a damage profile to get the full effect of. But like it's not to the same extent that like Astro has.
Well, I mean, Astro is supposed to be sort of like a time healer mage, right? Isn't that like its unique thing, though?
It was.
Yeah. Bring back time dilation, holy shit.
It's boomer time. Stormblood Astro was so much better. Where's all
Yeah,
the time aspects, Square Enix? Where did they go?
Yeah. I mean,
I
yeah,
think it's good design. I think it's fun. I mean, it's what makes it interesting to do. Same thing with like Exaltation. Like Exaltation is also another tool in their toolkit. Like it's just single target that you have to use like to where like the healing proc happens after like damage goes out, right? Like their toolkit's riddled with like these, I guess, cooperative abilities. And I think the big thing is like the other healers don't have that, so the other healers don't know how to play around that when they have like an Astro.
Yeah.
Because like unless you play a job, it kind of goes back to the same thing too. It's like let's say if you're a melee DPS, play a fucking tank, right? Play a tank, know how tanks work, or as a tank, play melee DPS. So like you know how your partner is thinking, right? Because like as a melee, your partner essentially is like the tank, right? Like you guys are kind of like working in tangent with one another to find viable solutions to help you succeed. And I think it's good to like have that experience, right? The issue is that like a lot of healers, they don't play Astro, so they don't really know how Astro really works in tangent like their own toolkits, right? So it's like I think it'd be good if like either they implement like that kind of system into like other healers where like you have to kind of like time it a little better. I guess Panheim is actually a good example of like a skill that kind of you have to work around a little bit. To, like,
is a beautiful ability. I love it so much.
I think the issue is that like most players probably don't even care to time it to where like they're gonna get like that little burst heal after, assuming that there's like they're not using it for like tumults or like any spammable AoE.
You get the nutty front load, the three stack expires coming up, and you see a Flatus Rapture appear, and you're like, all right, buddy.
Yeah. Well, you got see. That's the thing. You just have to time it around the other healer so it heals so quickly that they don't even react to it. Right? You gotta. I don't know. It's I. I've had a lot of fun trying to figure out how to use my abilities to like Physis too, right? Is such a like great ability to go ahead and throw out there and get in right before the other healer starts to heal. And just like get all that extra juice from their heals as well, even though they have no clue that you're doing it. Most of the time when you're in Party Finder, they're just like, "Oh, wow, I'm really good healing right now. I don't know what I'm doing." But it, I'll be honest with you. When I played Sage, and I started off, I didn't know all the little special ifs, thens, or buts about some of those abilities.
Really nice, but they hardly end up having a major effect.
Yeah, I didn't know about the healing boost from Physis 2 for a little while after I started playing Sage. And so I was always using it more of an after effect of just kind of, a regen that would heal up after. But using it before you cast all your abilities is way better, right? And then the stupidest thing while learning Sage that I did is not know that Crassus was a single target cast, and I thought it was just a general buff. And so I kept using it before my AoE heals, just putting Crassus on myself the entire time.
Crassus? I
Huh?
thought it was Crasus.
Is it Crasus? I don't know how to pronounce
I don't
anything.
know.
I call it Crasus too.
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. Craxus. It doesn't. I don't care. Yeah, it was the stupidest thing that I used to do back in the day. Then, there's just lots of little things like that if I'm experiencing these moments of stupidity, I expect everyone I play with to have the same thing going through their head, right? There's abilities they're not reading everything on, they're not optimizing in any way, and so they're likely, if they're struggling there, they have no clue what's going on with the other healers as well, so they don't know how to coordinate as well with them and everything. I feel like jobs like Astro are way more friendly overall. I guess this is kind of what you're saying as well, Momo, is like when you're in a static and you can kind of communicate with the other players, right? So it's less of a party finder friendly job overall.
Yeah, I mean, it also goes to the point where like you could use a tool. I mean, this goes for all healers too. Use a tool. You see your co-healers like, oh, they're putting this here. Okay, cool. I'll change it this pull or next pull, right? Next pull, you do your new healer rotation. Your co-healer now that you obviously can't communicate with, or it doesn't communicate with you, is now changing their thing as well because they're just putting stuff randomly anywhere they want, right? So now like it's like, okay, well, I'll just take the L and do a GCD heal here in here or wherever they're not using it this time. So it's
yeah.
Also, I think one thing I kind of want to talk about too, it's kind of like off topic, but it is about healers in the sense that like it's interesting, like the new abilities that they added, right? I have all the new abilities that they added in Endwalker, now like the expansion's over and you have like more time to really use the tools. Is like the only interesting one is like Macrocosmos, right? It's weird. I mean, Lilybell, it kind of fits the White Mage aesthetic, right? So I'm not really gonna harp on it too much because it's just like you place it, it does things for you, you're done, right? Why it wasn't auto pop or why you couldn't manually detonate it earlier in the expansion is a mystery to me, but at least they fixed it. Yeah, I don't know why they did that, right? But they fixed that. So that's fine. Like Lilybell's good, I think, for like the aesthetic of the job. Numa and Expedient though, like Numa is like, I don't know what they were like. I'm really curious what they were thinking between taking the mitigation aspect off Numa, because it is really toxic sometimes when you'll be using like Expedient for like the movement aspect, but now you're like sacrificing the mitigation aspect of it to the point where it's like, okay, well now what do I do here, right? Like I guess they were like looking at Numa like, okay, this is a huge heal. If you're using this, you're probably not using it for mitigation, so let's just give it to Holos. But like that's like, I don't know how I feel about that. Like the trade-off for Expedient is like much more than like the trade-off of like taking the mitigation off Numa and putting on Holos.
Yeah.
And I wish that they would like make abilities like Macro and Numa do more damage than the initial hit of like a Broil or a Dosis or like a Malefic. to give the player the choice of like, okay, I can use this for damage or I can use it for healing, right? Because
Yeah,
like
it incentivizes you to use it on cooldown if you can, if it is a DPS gain. Whereas right now you essentially only use it for healing because it's damage neutral, right?
yeah, which I think is fine for like some abilities, but I do like the idea of like them making like macro and like I guess Numa specifically. I think that's a really good like take on a new system designed for like GCDs that have like powerful effects on them. But if they do continue it, I do hope there's like some like differences between them and then they're not just all like damage neutral.
Yeah.
Because like macro is interesting in the fact that like okay, it's AoE, so like you can use it on like trash packs or ads phases, and it's a huge DPS gain. But you're sacrificing the healing of it, which is like something you think about, right? And maybe they're like scared because they're like, okay, well, if we do that, are people in Party Finder going to grief now and use it for damage only? Which the answer is probably yes. But I mean, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, considering also the healing now is like, I mean, you don't really
do
have
you
to
use
think
the
about
size for healing?
No.
Well, the fights are designed such that like if
just
you understand, they will heal things in that interval
Yeah.
because everything is on the 30-second cadence, right? Like every other
Because
size is really likely to heal something.
Sure.
yeah, if you get these skills that are damage gains and you're essentially going to use them on cooldown because they come up at certain times, you are going to plan around the use of those abilities to get healing out of them too, right? So you're going to shift other things away in order to go, okay, I'm going to use this in my raid burst. I'm not going to use Whispering Dawn because this is going to help top this from the other healer is going to top the raid, for example. It also kind of in some ways, it actually kind of helps mitigate the issue of not knowing what the other healer is doing, because you know that they're going to use their special DPS cooldown that also does either healing or mitigation. You know when they're going to use it because they're going to use it for damage. So you know when you can shift things away from something because you can plan around this static thing that will happen every 2-3 minutes.
Yeah, that's true. I do also want to talk about, particularly in this tier, something that was introduced that was a little bit of a topic, which is Harrowing Hell, and that type of mechanic being in fights. Do you feel like to make healing better in this game, we need more mechanics like that or less mechanics like that? Like, is that something that makes healing more engaging at all? Or is it just like, well, this is kind of annoying now, I just have to spam my BCD heals the entire time?
When it's surrounded by pretty like typical damage frequency, I don't think it adds too much. But like if there was Harrowing Hell and there was like, a frequency that might encourage you not to have everything up for Harrowing Hell, then I think it might be pretty cool.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty easy to have everything up for it.
That's the thing. Harrowing Hell is designed for. I'm pretty sure they designed you to dump like all your 2 minutes on it in like 90s. Because like the thing is, the only other source of damage before Harrowing Hell is the Bonds 3, which if you use your 90s on it, they come back up for Harrowing Hell, right? So like they design it to where you use your 2 minutes like on the mechanic before Bonds 3. They're back up for I think it's like Silk Spit or whatever. They come back up for Harrowing Hell. Use your 90s on Bonds 3. They're up for Harrowing Hell, and you just like dump them all on Harrowing Hell. And the healing isn't super intense because like at that point you're only taking like 20 to 30k per hit, and like even if you're just spamming GCDs, like you're fine, right? Like not even including like the off GCDs you're probably going to have.
As long as other people are using mitigation, I guess too, right?
Yeah. Well, no. Like I mean, I mean, Party Finder. It's like okay, you have like, why is Heart of Light not here? Why is Dark Missionary not here? Is like, why is there no Numa or not Numa, Penheima, or why is there no like Expedia, like all this stuff, right? There's definitely like Party Finder definitely struggles with like I can't
horrible.
Imagine healing it.
Like
It's a mystery.
It's one of these things like with that mechanic in particular, it's such a crazy thing. And the way they handle the limit breaks, and sorry, I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant because again, I love P10S so much. Bonds 3, everyone dies. You use your healer LB3 to get everyone up for the next mechanic. Now you don't have tank LB, and tank LB is something that Party Finder has started to require, almost, for that mechanic, just to ensure that people get through it. And so they're forced sometimes to learn how to heal that and mitigate that because they all fucked up the last mechanic. And then sometimes it becomes this wall, this like double wall of like, where are you going to use your LB? How are you going to handle these two just cluster mechanics that are just going to kill everybody if they don't know what they're doing? And I feel like that was super intentional, right? The Bonds 3 was supposed to be recoverable by Healer LB3, and Harrowing Hell, it was supposed to have a choice of tank LB for that, for people, and like, where do you make up for who's messing up?
You ready for a hot take? I don't think tank LB3 is that good for harrowing. I think tank LB2 is good for harrowing.
Oh, really?
But,
well, I mean, you don't have a choice, right? You'll have 3 at that point.
If
right?
all right, melees, hear me out, okay? If you melee LB1 the moment you get it, you will have LB2 for harrowing, and they won't have a choice.
I would love to see the Party Finder that you join react to you using.
Just they can't stop you. Just do it. They cannot stop you. Okay, like just.
And then everyone dies to Bonds 3.
Yeah, it's definitely a trade-off.
If you do, but if it's roll stacks, really only 2 people have to die to Bonds 3. If we're being honest here, like
I mean, sure, yeah. If you could coordinate that with the group you're with, and just say, hey, let's just make sure whoever gets roll stack, jump off the side. That's the mechanic for you.
No, just abandon them, leave, like go somewhere else. They can't catch you. They won't be expecting it.
People that want to take a damage down to Intemperance to clear. You think they're gonna want to do whatever you just said?
No. I'm not suggesting you tell them you're gonna do.
You should just do it. Get blacklisted
I'm not,
and not
yeah.
be able to go into the party anymore. Party Finder has been brutal, and we talked about it on the last show too. It is a mess when you go in. Half the groups are like, if you mess up 3 times, we'll blacklist you. And so it's kind of Wild West out there. So a lot of people are just doing whatever they can not to get kicked out of a party, because everyone's just blacklisting everyone, and the Party Finder list is getting less and less because they just.
Yeah, Tier's rough. Tier's rough. There's a lot of rough mechanics.
Yeah.
Outside 11. 11's so weird. I don't know why they always mess up. The third turn's always just weird. Is they mess it up every time, because like it's not supposed to be like a puzzle fight. I mean, generally, I think it's safe to say it's not supposed to be a puzzle fight. It's just supposed to be like an execution fight. But they never do that. Like the only good third turn this expansion, just from a healing perspective too, was like P3. The other ones are just kind of like, they're all just kind of mid or bad.
You know, again, the res puzzle for P11 is fun sometimes. Figuring out how to get people back up in the right order and how to tackle that stuff can be fun.
I have a question about P11 actually. Where the fuck did those twister mechanic go? Like, you know what I'm talking about? It happened in normal mode. Dark and light. Where did they go? They're not in Savage.
Yeah, they are. They're
Where are they?
They're in the Protean. They're the dark AV baits.
Oh, is that the partner thing?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah,
that's
it's the party.
I thought-
That's the party one.
I thought the twister mech started with the D though. Then I thought it
Diagos or whatever it's called.
I don't know. I called it
Dialogos?
Denim.
I think
but
it's just a
called
different
something else.
cast,
Oh,
but I'm pretty sure
Dionysus?
they use the same animations.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
The thing that's historical about P11 is it's the first premium skin in FF14, because it's just a premium skin of Thancred from last expansion.
Everyone was like so hyped. They're like, "Oh, it's Fatebreaker," and I'm like,
I don't think anyone was
But, like,
hyped. They were like, "Wow, this
everyone
is gonna be
I
boring."
heard was like
Oh.
hyped over the normal mode, right? Like when the normal modes dropped, right? Everyone was like, 10 sucks, 11's going to be sick. And I was like, I don't know, man. 10 has all the pieces to be a banger, and wouldn't you know?
You know what the funny
Kareth
part
F.
is?
Crestfall vindicated.
When we were discussing that and like what could really come up for these fights when we didn't see the Savage yet, we spotted all the things in 10 and it was like, this could be good. But it depends on if Square Enix is gonna make it good, right?
Of
Like
course.
we always just we see these things, so we could think of all the creative things, but they actually did some of the things, plus threw in towers, which came out of nowhere. Um, which God, that literally the first pools of towers had to have been like some of the best for a lot of the groups that were going in there.
It,
I think they.
it's
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead. I was just gonna
I,
go off a little bit of topic.
on those towers, I think that they actually had a different plan for those snake towers. Limit cut was going to be the same, but
Mm,
I think that the 8 tower mech that happens like every minute and a half or something,
right.
like where
Mhm.
you go a mill and you take your towers. I'm pretty sure initially they were going to like have the snake towers spawn on different rows, and you would have to adjust your tower because it's such a weird shoe in that they just like remove like the back half of the arena
Yeah.
every time.
Mm. Like you mean towers like on the side platforms?
No. So during the 8 tower mechanic, the very back of the arena,
Mm-hmm.
the 2 snake towers from Limit Cut spawn, and they remove like the back like I don't know, was it quarter of the arena or something? They shoot a line AoE, and
Are
I
we
think
talking
that they
about
would
which one are we talking about? Sorry, P10.
yes P10.
Why am I blanking on this?
Okay, just you got it because no one looks backwards. No one
Okay.
ever turns their camera around.
Mm-hmm.
It's happening. I promise you. There are towers in the back of the room that are removing the back column or row of the arena, and I think originally they had planned to like have those have some like variety, where they would like potentially remove columns instead, or like remove like the middle row, and have something for you to rack to. But they almost certainly cut it.
They
Okay.
I don't know where I was going with
probably
that. I just wanted to bring it up.
It's
Okay.
probably because there's a out and in, and I think the only time that would probably do anything is if there's an out, right? Because like if it's in, you're I don't think you can actually do the, well, at least traditionally, I don't think you can do like the second or third row at all. I think the only row you can do is the first. So that if they were gonna do that, assuming it was there from the start, they could have just shoehorned that in as well to
Yeah.
make it like viable. Like we don't actually know how they designed the mechanic, I guess, but yeah, like if the snake tower shot the line AoE was random, it would only affect the chariot pattern.
Hmm. Oh man, the turret beams are so good for that fight too. Uh, Party Finder has so much fun with trying to argue about angling those things too, which is absolutely pointless.
I've been shot so many times as a dragoon.
Yeah.
Like just
Oh yeah.
from nowhere.
Yeah. Like just yeah, because someone just randomly walks up across one and grabs and snaps in with the targeting on it, and it's so great, dude.
That's why
Uh,
P10 is so good because it has like almost no major headline like pinnacle set piece mechanics, right? All of it is like stack spread pairs, all this kind of stuff. But it's all tuned just tightly enough that if you mess up the timing or the angle, everything goes to shit in a
mhm.
really funny way. So you know that every pull of P10 is going to be content, no matter what.
Yep.
You're either going to laugh at somebody else or you're going to laugh at yourself.
Yep.
It it is like if there is going to be a PF bingo this tier, I guarantee you 10 will take up the majority of the possible squares.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Jeez, dude. Anyways, let's talk. We've talked a lot about the current state of healing in Final Fantasy 14 and kind of this recent tier and how they've taken things. Um, and some of the grievances that we have. What could they do to really move this forward in 7.0 though? Like, what are some of the directions you would want them to actually take to change healing?
I'd like to see more DPS complexity. I know like it doesn't have to be much, but like I think going back to that like personal progression path that like a healer would take,
Mm-hmm.
having like and especially now that the DPS checks are where they are, like you could have extra optional healer DPS complexity that wouldn't matter in the grand scheme of encounter balance because a healer that doesn't output perfectly will still be able to produce enough to like kill the fight, right? At least that was true for this tier, right? Because the checks were quite
I mean,
lenient.
I was going to talk to you guys about that too. I mean, that was the
And
direction they took with these raids, is make the damage not as important.
I personally don't really like the super tight DPS checks unless there's like other mechanics there that make it seem fun and interesting. I like having recoverability be possible in my clears, but the copium is that they will use that new wiggle room to allow healers to have, you know, optional DPS expression. I don't think they will, just to be clear. This is copium. They're going to probably turn a few blue buttons orange and a few orange buttons blue, put a new name on them, and re-release the same jobs.
Yeah. I don't think there's actually going to be anything. I don't think the thing is they can't, right? They are like shoehorned into a formula that is like bad for both sides of the player base, like skill level wise. Like they can't make the healing too hard or too punishing. So they can't make fights hard to heal, right? In the sense that like that utilize your whole toolkit. Which is good for like the casual side, right? Bad for the hardcore side, right? Then there's this weird spot where it's like, man, if these players will like never, and maybe that's fine with them, right? Like maybe they don't actually care about this. Like the skill level like of these players are never going to like really increase unless they make a fight that like pushes their boundaries, right? I think actually a really good fight for healing was P8 Part 2, and I kind of hope they take the P8 Part 2 formula because I think it's really a really good mix between HPS with like natural alignment and like the mitigation check of like high concept, right? It's almost in my opinion like the perfect savage fight for healing, where it's like not super hard for like I guess a veteran healer, but like it's still challenging enough to where it's like a little bit interesting because there's like a lot of HPS output and damage output going out there.
You know, the interesting thing, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Since you mentioned P8S, P2, the interesting thing about healing there too is that they have moments where you can't do DPS and all you can do is healing and you have to heal during those phases. Which can be, I guess, kind of interesting in a way, is that they're like, hey, just focus 100% on healing. This is all we need you to do at this point. Execute mechanics and heal. They could create challenging healing checks within these little mechanic dances where DPS is turned off, right? Or is that too much?
No,
like dancing.
No, not stance dancing, but like when you're in, like, for example, high concept, you don't do damage to the boss, right?
Yeah.
You're just executing a mechanic, but you do have to heal because people are getting like those Ifrit charges or Ifrit stacks or whatever else.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, and so the adding like part of the healing difficulty being in these phases where they need to put the harrowing hell level of healing during a spot where you wouldn't need to do DPS anyways.
I feel like the reason it's always very classically been an issue is because as soon as the boss isn't targetable, you instantly have access to all of your GCD healing, right? So you can just spam GCD healing as much as you want. And the reason that almost any uptime healing check in the game isn't trivial is because you don't have access to your GCD tools aside from if you feel like you really need it. So as soon as it goes into a downtime phase, I feel like even if they put like a super hard healing check, it would be a lot easier than it has any right to be, because both healers would just be spamming healing GCDs the entire time, right? And they can never really super tightly tune any healing check because it has to be clearable by a player who doesn't have perfect mitigation up for that mechanic, right? So I feel like it would be really almost impossible for them to fine tune it in such a way that it would satisfy both types of player.
Because I mean, and essentially, the only thing that's really hard to heal in this game is two sources of damage. It's damage while doing a mechanic / moving, like natural alignment. I guess is actually kind of a good one because doing, well, I guess not the PF strat, but I guess doing like the prog strats. I think Kindred might have done it too, where like there's so much movement going on. I guess like in that early week 1 strat, week 2 strat, that was like kind of challenging for healers to like heal the other side of the party. Hello World, I mean, is a good one. You know, party split around the arena, you can't reach everybody. Like stuff like that is challenging to an extent. But then like the other challenging part of healing is like healing damage that isn't, I guess, normalized throughout the party, right? This goes to like top again. You can use the towers as an example, right? You have sets of people taking damage at different times. Now, if you add more damage in between that, now we're talking like final Omega, where you have like the short stack, long stack during like defamations and AoEs going out. Now you have like a source of like interesting damage output going out, and it adds like more flavor to actually healing the party. When there's just AoE spam like J waves or like Herring Hell, it's not exactly interesting healing, and I wouldn't say it's hard healing either, because like in reality you can just spam GCDs and there's like no timing aspect to it. Even if like you mistime a heal, you're just like still spamming heals, right? Like you're not gonna wipe the party outside like maybe the end of J waves or
If you're a party finder,
and Herring Hell. Well, yeah, so I'm saying like it was in a, not even like a perfect world, but like just a like just the way the mechanics work. The damage goes out.
Yeah.
This is a little bit of a tangent, but you mentioned about stuff like Hello World and dealing with damage profiles and stuff. I think that Harrowing Hell would have been way more interesting if it was exactly the same way it is now, but instead of the tanks needing to take the front hit every time, there would be a debuff on party players, and DPS and healers would need to rotate in and out to individually take the first hit. So
thank you.
I think that would have made it so much more interesting.
Let's save it for when they do the ultimate.
Okay, but that's a good that's a really good point. Maybe not for a second turn, right? Like, you know, I don't know. I mean, I like that idea because like I'm a really big fan of like for example, one of the best healing mechanics in the entire game, in my opinion, is the finale of P4 Part 2, right? Where there isn't just healing going out, like the party is working together to like actually, you know, do the mechanic and keep the party alive, right? Because like not only is it like there's like insane damage going out, but also the damage isn't consistent because the people who are proccing, I think this goes back to what Kareth was saying
Player
earlier too.
agency.
Yeah,
Please.
there's like there's you're popping the damage yourself, right? Which is really good in my opinion because like it doesn't lead to normalized healing, right? Because like if you plan to do a heal at a certain spot and the player doesn't pop at that specific spot, well, now that's either overheal or not really doing anything. Sorry, yeah, current call, not finale. But like stuff like that is really good, and it's kind of like something I wish they would do for like stuff like J waves too, where it's like J waves is such a boring mechanic for everybody that's not the healer because like what are you doing? You're just bursting there, right? Like they could have easily had like communion puddles going out there and had like DPS and tanks like rotate around the arena while like keeping uptime on the burn bosses, right? Like there's so many things they can do during these heal check moments, but they just don't, and it's just not interesting.
You mean make it like while the healers are dealing with all this other crap, the DPS and the tanks have to figure something out too?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be like hard mechanic, right? Like I don't think like placing like current call isn't like a hard mechanic. You're backing up, popping the tether, coming back in, right? But like it just adds flavor to like the HPS check. It's not just like stand still and burn the boss.
I do feel like DPS and tanks need a lot more to do during these fights. Overall, it makes their kits more interesting in general, or just like their involvement in the fights a lot more interesting than what they are right now. But
yeah,
and then just give the healers less mechanics they have to do, so healing becomes part of the mechanic. I guess I don't know. But go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, like, you know, there's if they don't want to make healing more exciting, you know, you could always make DPS more exciting, and then like, you know, the mundane healing becomes more interesting because you have other things to think about while you're like executing it. From a personal standpoint, I'm just saying, Yoshi P, please.
You know what they should do?
Too.
At the end of every fight, after you clear it, throw up a scoreboard like they do in PvP, and just show healing output, DPS output for the
no,
dude,
no,
and then the deaths, the death roll.
Well, not that No, that is not going to have the effect you think it will. That is
Dude, that
not.
reminds me of
We'll
people
have a
saying
bunch of
like,
Medica 2 Melvins.
yeah, exactly, yeah. People like old Stormblood Scholar, if you played it, it's like when you played Stormblood Scholar, like it looked like you weren't healing at all because like there was no, you had no cast bars, right, compared like to Astro and White Mage. So like the amount of times people like see like, oh, you're not casting anything, well, it's like, yeah, because like the majority of my stuff is like off the global cooldown, like the fairy, your options, your
Oh,
AFFO
yeah.
heals, like that would like come back in like a different way because like people would just be spamming like their GCD heals and be like, oh, I healed more than you. You're like, you're bad, right?
Yeah, I know.
And if there's anything,
well,
FF14
overhealing
players,
column too. Yeah, go ahead.
If there's anything FF14 players can't be trusted with, it's properly interpreting a metric and like
I mean, you're not wrong.
assessing what that means, right? I think FF14 has learned this lesson already. That like if you dangle a number in front of an FF14 player, they're instantly going to like turn into like the worst creature you've ever met. Like, and it's just not something.
I think
you
it's
do.
funny because
like,
I would if there was like a leaderboard for healing, I would totally just like if I saw an Astro put the star down, oh yeah, I'd be the first to fucking pop that Planary Raptor and just
Oh my God.
HP.
I don't know. That'd be fun. I think that'd be fun though, right? People get healed for sure. At least, I guess.
I mean, I guess yeah, they would.
no, you would want people to die so their HP would reset back down.
Oh,
and
true.
Oh,
true,
so
true.
you could do benediction.
You would have
briefing?
people jumping off the edge after being topped. Like that would be. Oh.
It'd be
Yeah, so
fun.
does healer LB count towards your HPS? Because you could just have the 7
Yeah,
guys
yeah,
die,
absolutely.
heal LB back up. There we go, rank 1. Let's go.
Yeah. Jeez. But I mean, not you wouldn't rank it in a ladder or anything like that. It would just be a scoreboard at the end of the fight, right? Just a scoreboard, just like they do with Crystalline Conflict, right? Where you just have that scoreboard of everyone's numbers there. It exists in the game, and they can put it there. They can also put spectator mode in the game too. But see.
Yeah. I mean, spectator mode's kind of in the game already with the duty recording that nobody ever uses.
Like 3 duties, yeah.
Yeah, the 3. I don't think is it even here for Savage yet? They like
Don't-
put it in like super late.
Dude, the last duty I remember seeing someone use that on was Omega MNF. Like that's how long ago.
Yeah, I don't know
it being
what they were
used.
thinking with that. Yeah, like that's such a weird design decision. It's like you make this really cool system that is like super valuable, especially for like static stuff, but you can't use it until like it's irrelevant. So it's like, what's the point? I don't know.
Yeah, that is kind of a frustrating thing. I hope they fix that in 7.0, because it'd be really great for like 9th man play and everything as well. And raiding is such a huge part of Final Fantasy 14. Well, I mean, a lot of people who do raid are like in the casual side of stuff too, and they may take a while to get through it. But a lot of people raid. When you think of Final Fantasy 14, the big thing is story, right? Community, all that great stuff. But then PvE is its next layer of involvement that people play the game for. I think, at least, unless you guys think differently, I think that's how it goes. Everything else is like just whatever. I mean, maybe casual, just crafting, gathering, hitting maxes on things might be above rating. I don't know. But it's known for having sparkly raids. The World Race has a huge focus on it just because people love seeing the puzzles and getting it all figured out as well. So I do think they do need to keep people who are heavily invested in the rating in Final Fantasy XIV happy as well, even if it's a lower player base, right? Because they can't dumb it down too much, because since once you get to a certain level, then it stops becoming as interesting. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they initially dumbed it down for like balancing reasons, because they initially were like really upset that people were skipping certain mechanics, because like the DPS difference between good healers and good tanks and bad healers and bad tanks in Stormblood was massive.
Yeah.
But like then like so they like tightened that a lot, right? A lot. And then they did Shadowbringers, which had some DPS checks, and then all the way up to Abyssos, which also had a pretty tight DPS check, you know, relative to other Savage fights. And, you know, it made sense, I guess. I don't really like it. I don't think it's worth better balance to have like more, you know, less complicated jobs or like more boring jobs, in my opinion. But like now that they've kind of like walked that back a bit, it would really be nice if they like, you know, allowed there to be like a bit of a divide there for people to try and tackle, you know, whenever they feel like they want to like explore that part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's so weird because like if we go back to like the Heaven's Ward and maybe even early Stormblood, jobs were so complicated and had such fucking different timings to one another, different requirements to one another. Scholar had like 4 dots or something, all on different timers, and just in it would take up a lot of brain space, right? You'd spend quite a decent amount of brain space into executing your rotation optimally, and as a result sometimes the mechanics would have to be a little bit more simple so that you could do them. Whereas now the rotations for every job, healers especially, is so simple and takes up so much brain space that I feel like it's almost like science has gone too far, right? And I feel like they really need to re-implement maybe not all of it, but a little bit of it next expansion. Because I feel like this expansion, with when they added the new abilities for each job, they took the most boring route they possibly could have. They were like, okay, here is an upgrade to your DPS skills. Here is a single target heal or mitigation, and here is an AoE heal or mitigation. There you go, you're done. It's like the most boring option they could possibly do. And I just really hope that they don't do that again next expansion, and they go for something that allows players to play the game a little differently next year than they did this year.
Like expedience?
I
I
just think they're
guess
gonna,
the thing about expedience, right? Expedience does have the movement tool, but you're going to use it for the mitigation most of the time,
Yeah.
right?
yeah,
So
that's
like the movement tool is kind of just a little bonus that you get on the MIT tool that you're
I
going
do
to
think they need to take the
plan.
MIT tool off of that and make it pure.
Like, where would you put it though? That's the thing. Like you can't Scholar doesn't have any tools you can put it on that like would make sense outside expedience, which is like, I mean, I guess they could do it to Fey Illumination, but like Fey Illumination is already a mitigation tool in the sense that like it's 5%. Like you
unless you
can't.
bring back Celine and you put on Celine.
Why did they get rid of Celine again?
God, dude, it's again with the DPS gap. I'm fairly certain because like Celine increased your damage output by a margin that was probably unsatisfactory for them. Like they just like they were so concerned with tightening that divide like between the damage outputs from casuals and non-casuals that they like went scorched earth. So,
Yeah, I mean, Celine was like that was another thing. If you didn't play in Stormblood, I didn't really understand, but the amount of scholars who would grief your party by playing with Celine instead of AS was like astronomical, and it was to the point where like it was just not fun to play with scholars because like scholars already didn't want to heal like in Party Finder because like they took a damage loss, whatever, with Aethful healing. Because not only was like it was also back then it was more punishing to like Aethful heal, right? Because like ED was 150 potency, so like instead of losing 100, you're losing like 50% more. So it's like there's that, and then there's also the fact that like if you didn't use Celine, then you're that like 30-second 3% haste buff that lasted like for half the fight, essentially, because it was a 60-second cooldown, so you had it for like half the fight. So if you didn't have that, you know, you're just losing that damage too, right? But like the thing is, you're just griefing your co-healer, not using AS in like a random like an environment which you couldn't communicate with others.
did you also ever run into the classic scholar archetype that would use dissipation and then not bring back the fairy until
Oh yeah, I
downtime?
remember that too, because that was a thing. I forgot
The
that. Yeah,
fucking creature, dude. Like I hated that stuff so much.
the scholar is like like it's funny how like every healer has had like its moment to be like the denizen of the night, like that is Kareth is talking about, right? Like Stormblood it was scholar, Shadowbringers it was white mage. What would be the grief healer? I mean, I guess it would be scholar again. I feel like they're the only one that still loses something, but
I mean, now they're so similar. Like,
yeah.
I mean, Astro Heavensward where you had like the 20% buff on damage from them, right? And like you just had to get lucky.
In Creator, yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, they fixed that. Well, actually, no, it was really bad at the beginning, right? No one liked it at the beginning of Heavensward, and then they started to like it a little bit more as the expansion went on because they gave them the ridiculous buffs to it. I think it was supposed to be like really good at Midas, and they overstepped it and went in the Creator and went crazy. But yeah, so long, dude.
It's been a while, yeah.
Yeah. And then we get Sage, and Sage, again, I think Sage is just perfect, guys. I think they did a great job.
Sage is, I'll be a Sage hater. I think Sage is awful.
It's like I said this before we started, but like the only reason why I like Sage is like only in contrast to the other three healers. Like overall, it's still a healing job, and therefore is like a blight on the world. Like
Jesus,
it's like
I think the thing about Sage is the same thing about Astro, or I guess the White Mage, right? It's very easy and accessible, but like, I mean, Sage does have more benefits than, like, let's say Sage versus Scholar has more benefits than Astro versus White Mage. Astro is like almost better in every regard than White Mage. Like in like the only department I would say like White Mage is better is like brain power, right? Like you can put more brain power into like doing mechanics and learning mechanics. But at that point it's like that's like a skill issue thing, you know. It's like if you have an insanely good Astro, like, then there really is no competition. It is what it is, right? Like if you have like a fucking brainiac who can play that job at like the level that you can in like Ward Prog, then
I think that's a little bit of like self-patting on the back there, Momo.
I don't play Astro in Prog.
Oh, I
he played Scholar.
Oh, okay, all right.
He did play Sage briefly in top, and then he became a coward or something.
Because the thing about Sage has multiple benefits over Scholar. Like movement is one of them, right? Like movement is like the core one. MP management is like so much better on Sage as well because you're refunded like 400 MP or whatever every time you use your shield, as long as you don't overcap. So like instead of wasting 1,000 MP to cast a sucker, realistically you're only wasting 400 MP because I think, where is this? Yeah, it's only 500 MP because your heal's 900 MP or your shield's 900 MP. So you're refunded basically 400 of that. So like it's only essentially it's 500 to cast a shield on the party, which is crazy. That is like probably that's more important to me than the movement aspect because like in Prog, like who cares, right? I guess like in most mechanics, I guess like you can kind of just like plant for a second or learn pretty fast. But that MP like that goes a long way, especially when you want to run like lower party levels.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also have the fact that like your mitigation on stage is like a little bit more spaced out. You can kind of plan it a little bit better since like it's not tied to anything like expedience, right? Like even though like for the majority of the part like you're going to be using expedience for movement or mitigation, you also want to use it for movement, right? There was plenty of times in Prog where I was like, okay, like I kind of just forego the mitigation aspect to make like things a little bit easier to Prog.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that is something you have to deal with on Scholar that you don't have to deal with on Sage. But Scholar also has the benefit of you having more control over your toolkit. I think Sage is a little bit too automated to where, like, for example, I guess Panheima, right? It's good, but like it's not better than Seraph IMO. Just because Seraph is
on the mechanic, right? Like it depends on if you need the healing in between. Like it's similar to Scholar or the soil thing, right? Like I definitely think like Panheima and Seraph, I can't actually think of one where I'd actually prefer one over the other for the mechanics. But like the soils, I can definitely like see divergent use cases.
I can see Panheima. I would rather have Panheima for bleeds, like tumults or
anything like that. Beautiful for bleeds, yeah.
But the thing about Consulate or Seraph is that like essentially Seraph is a 50-second shield, which is like something you can't get like anywhere outside like maybe, or actually Divine Veil doesn't work like that anymore. Yeah, like so Seraph is like the only tool that you can really like stagger to the point where it like lasts for like 50 seconds, which I think is like insanely valuable.
50-second front load and prog. I'm trying to think of when like that is valuable. I can't recall for the life of me when I was sitting there looking at a 50-second front load and prog that I like identified while we were like mid pull.
For me, the only one was top. Like for the we use it for the start of top where for the first Dragon Song stack,
Oh, the
Cosmo Dive.
P6. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then you could like summon it to the point where like if you use Constellation like 2 seconds before it disappeared, it would last for the I forgot the names of the abilities, Jesus Christ. The spread, the cannon spread.
Oh yeah, the protein mechanic, yeah.
Hmm.
In Savage though, I mean you are right that it's like a little bit less valuable because you're progging so fast that like I think the only time you're going to get that value is the final turn, where you're like kind of stuck on it more. But even then it's like not as nuanced as I guess it needs to be.
You know,
Well, that's because the healers have very little nuance to them.
Exactly.
Unlucky, really, like tragic.
When we going back to Sage for just a second here again, we have to assume this Sage is the ideal healer that they would want to have in the game when they built that ground up, right? For what they want currently within Endwalker, Sage was kind of what they were going with.
Don't say that.
No?
I mean,
just don't
Yeah, 'cause
manifest
the
it. That's really the big thing.
Because the reason that Sage is so good is because it's so easy, right? Everything has a very obvious use case that you don't have to think about very deeply. It's very much you just apply solution to the problem, and they're all really obvious. Like the soil is what's it called, Caracol. It's like press it and forget it instead of needing to actually manually place it and make sure that you've placed it smartly. Like everything just kind of works on its own on Sage, and you can move while shielding. You don't need to think about where you're positioning. Like that's the reason that Sage is good, but that's also the reason why healing is bad.
Okay.
I mean, it goes to the same thing as like Y Mage, right? Y Mage versus Astro, right? Like the disparity between the two is like huge when it comes to like their healing toolkits. Like they're so different. And in a way, like Scholar and Sage are the same way. Like their healing toolkits are like they're very samey, but they're also very different. Because like while Sage is like the easy healer, everything has like a use. Like when you look at Scholar's toolkit, like you're not gonna get the same effect, I think, as a new player that looks at it. Because like when you see Fey Blessing, like you're looking at that and like, why would I ever like use this as like a newer player, beginner player of the job? Like you look at these tools that are like kind of like really weak by themselves, right? Like Fey Blessing, Fey Illumination, those two skills are like really bad in single use cases, but like when you use them in tangent with like your co-healer or like other tools in your toolkit, they become like very strong because they're so weak, they're also like super efficient in the same way.
Well, I think Sage they front loaded the difficulty and reading the abilities.
Maybe pronunciation. Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe figuring out the pronunciation of the names might be the toughest bit of the job.
Yeah, it was pretty rough, man. And I remember when it first came out, Yoshida said this is not for starter healers.
That's weird. Yeah.
Every time he talks about healers, it's like the biggest L I've ever seen in my life. Like every single time he brings up healers, it's like, oh god, I just want to like go in the fetal position. Like it's so bad. Like it's so bad.
Don't get me in trouble.
Kara. Oh yeah, no.
Don't get me in trouble, Kara. Because he's going to like say MogTalk's opinion on this, and it's not. It's Kareth's fucking carrot ass opinion.
Well, can we talk about?
If you want complex healing, play Ultimate.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up too. I was gonna bring that up too. Like, I mean,
I love 30-second uptime phases followed by spamming the same green button over and over again in downtime. It's so complex. Oh,
that's the thing about like it feels very weird in terms of your face right now.
No, it's okay. Keep going.
No. So like it is very weird. Like I feel like it's so easy to make like a hard healing fight in Ultimate. Because like just make damage every like 75-80 seconds, right? because just doing that naturally will like put your toolkit in a position to where like it's just super unnatural, and like you can't have everything for everything, right? Like in top, like you have something for everything because like it's just designed to the point where it's like, hey, you know, big damage, nothing, big damage, nothing, big damage, nothing. It's the same with DSR, big damage, nothing, right? But if you make damage profiles, even like something like crazy, like I guess 70 would be like probably the most insane you'd be able to get, because at that point it would never sync up with like the same like tool, right? Like you'd have to like interchange everything like every time you use something, right? But like it's so, I think it's so easy. I guess I mean, to be fair, Ultimate is weird in the case where it's like push times, whatever, right? I will give them that. Push timings, I would rather have awkward push timings based on kill time than static healing.
I would kill for that, dude. No more cast locks, please.
So
Yeah.
again, I've avoided Ultimates like the plague, just because like how much time it consumes and having to form like groups and actually have coordination and work together to get these done. But I am doing top because I said I would do it, due to a charity incentive that was 6 months ago at this point. So I only have experience with top when healing. I don't have experience with DSR and the previous, you know, T, Uu, and UCOB. Would you say healing in any of those fights at all at the time that it was actually released was difficult in any of those fights?
UCOB was
Well,
fun.
UCOB
I don't
was
know
insane.
if I call it
Yeah.
difficult, but it was very fun.
No, I
There
think
was like
UCOB was
so
hard
much
as fuck.
tech. I guess
I
relative to
gen-
everything else.
Yeah,
I
like
genuinely think that week 1 Savage is harder to heal on the 4th turn than any ultimate, because ultimates not only is it all just did you press your mitigation? If yes, you succeed. If no, you die. Like Momo said, the damage is so staggered out that you almost always have everything for everything that matters, or you have like half of your stuff for one thing and then half for the other, and you really don't have to think too much about it. Whereas like turn 4 of Savage week 1, you normally have to do a bit of copium GCD healing to make sure that things are safe, because there is much more frequent damage coming out, and it's kind of weird that it's like that, right? Because you'd think it would be the other way around, and the ultimates would be super tight on healing all the time, and they're just kind of not. I don't really know why.
Well, I mean, week 1 Savage is like a completely different beast overall. And so week 1 Savage exists for 1 week in the game. Ultimate exists for like forever, and so it would never get nerfed by gear or anything else, right? And so you would basically be having like that level of difficulty in healing for Ultimate that will never be more accessible until I guess the next expansion comes out.
I was about to say,
You get
potency creep
the plus
definitely.
5 eye levels with like it's like 2 patches later, I think, right? Like, and you get potions the next patch and stuff like that, and an extra food that gives you a bit more HP and a bit more stats. I feel like they could get away with it because it's still considered that if you kill an ultimate on patch, it's supposed to be like quite a big accomplishment, right? So it's supposed to be one of those things where like you've killed the pinnacle content in the game, and it's just really odd to me that the pinnacle content in the game on patch is not the hardest thing to heal. And even on the same expansion, like because they are indirectly nerfed by you getting extra gear and you getting better food and you getting better potions, like those would also nerf the healing check because you just get
Well, I mean,
you know more numbers easier kind of thing.
the thing is, like, even if you get like a slight bit of extra numbers, I mean, I guess in some cases it will be true, but not in all cases. Unless if the group's HP is getting down to like 3-digit health or like 4-digit health, or so, that it doesn't really matter, right? With the gear upgrades, you just still have to same exact buttons the same way. You just have a little bit extra health in the end, right? Or am I understanding that wrong?
I think some cases they save you from a missed mit, like a 10% or something. I mean, I don't know the math for every single time it's been implemented, but like, I know for
I know
Ultimate,
damage
our
wise,
mid plan-
100%, right? Nerf every single time there's new potions or anything, because then those DPS checks start to fall down. You can miss a GCD here or there, and it becomes okay.
I recall Ultimate changing when we got cheater gear, like our mid plan, because certain things became livable. But I don't know if that's true for T or UCOB.
I think looking back at Ultimates too, they Yukab and Uwu felt a lot better to heal than any of the other ultimates, just because like as a scholar, for example, like the only tool you really had was like Indom, right? Soil was like super bad because there was like not a region on it, so like it was really only used for like mitigation. And then you had your fairy, and like that was it, right? And just like having a limited toolkit like that in general is going to make things feel a lot better. On top of like the 2.5 second cast time as well, it was like a totally different ball game. Same thing. Uwu felt really good to heal too back then. I think it was just.
Sorry,
Y'all,
sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you're good. You're good. I mean, feel free to chime in.
It wasn't just the toolkit. It was like, well, it was the big part was the toolkit, but it was also like the other aspects of like the healers like had things you could optimize on, like deploying a sucker off the fairy during the Gruta phase was like felt so sick.
Mm-hmm. The deploy in general was like so much stronger back then too with the crit low. Like the toolkits back then were just they were smaller, I guess, and a little bit more, I guess. I don't really like using the term, but I don't know what else to use it. They were like more clunky in the sense that like they were just less of everything and they worked differently and they weren't as strong as they are now. And
also,
okay,
back to soil. There was that one funny interaction that normally wasn't ever something you thought about, but during Ultima, after predation for the tumults, I would see so many groups wipe because the scholar would put soil down and then like shadow flare would come up and they just hit it out of instinct, not realizing that those two were exclusive back then, and then they would die.
That's a clunky thing.
So yeah, it was so funny.
Like, I don't think clunk is bad, but it seems like it's pretty common for people to say like, oh, if something is like clunky, then it's automatically bad design. But like the thing about clunkiness, as long as it's like not super overbearing, is that it generally adds like optimization and it adds fun to the job. Because like when something is super fleshed out, it's not fun, right? I mean, it's fun for like whenever you play it for like the first couple hours, but like after a certain while, it just becomes like brain AFK autopilot.
So what you're saying is get rid of all the 30, 60, 90, like perfect even second.
Oh, if they got rid of 30-second stuff, that would be insane, but they'll never do that.
They would need to change encounter design, though, to go with that.
Which was going to go back to my other point, where it's like encounter design changed at some point. I think like after probably Uwu, maybe before, to where they started focusing more on party-centric mechanics rather than like individual role-based mechanics. I mean, actually, I guess that probably didn't change until like way later in like Shadowbringers, I guess. But like it started like taking shape because like they stopped giving healers a lot of responsibility during like super intensive moments of the fight. But like I wouldn't even mind if like because they want each player to have like the same responsibility essentially when it comes to like mechanics, right? It's like why in top like Hello World works the way it does. It's why like DSR, right? There's really no HPS checks because like they're all they want you to have like the same responsibility as like a or a tank healer, right, at those moments. But like I wouldn't even mind if like, for example, I guess they made like Hello World a little bit easier on healers, but they made the damage much more like heavy, I guess, right? Like just like maybe one or two like parts of the fight, 30-45 seconds each, where healers have a little bit less responsibility, but like there's way more healing going out. Something like I guess Annihilation does pretty well. Like just have them have some kind of debuff. Maybe it splits them away from the party. They have to like pick up a tether, something that doesn't have to be super interesting or hard, but it adds like a sense of difficulty, or I don't know the word I would use.
I mean, I would almost say that like Dark Jury and P11S kind of had a little bit of that. But like, I guess like when you figure it out, you over mitigate it anyways. It's just not that big of a deal.
I'm more so talking about like insane healing and like ultimates specifically, not like Savage.
Right.
Or it's just like it's like more outgoing damage than like something like J-Waves, I guess, or like similar damage to J-Waves, but like obviously like not the whole fight, but like every like maybe 2 times a fight, 3 times a fight, and then like an ultimate where like there's just an HPS check. Healers have like a little bit less responsibility than like DPS or tanks, but like at that moment their responsibility is keeping the party alive.
This is essentially the Gruta phase, right?
Yeah.
Like you would sit there. I remember watching groups that they had to space out the melee cleanses so that the healers could do it because they weren't fast enough on the draw with Endon.
Yeah, like I think Garuda's a good example of a good healing phase. Living Liquid's really good. Like Living Liquid, for example, you don't really do anything as a healer, but it's still pretty engaging, I think. Because like you still have to dodge the doll explosions, right? You can't just sit in the center. Like you're dodging the doll explosions. You're still moving for like the the sluices and the proteins and all that. Like there's still like movement going on there that kind of like adds like a bit of flavor to like how you're handling mechanics and healing, because you can't just plant, right? That's like the kind of healing that I'm talking about. BJCC is also a really good example where like you're constantly moving around the arena. You can't just sit still and plant, but like you don't really have that much responsibility outside like being in the water stacks.
Do you think there's a lot of improvement in healing overall that can be just done through simple fight design?
Yeah,
Then change
I mean
up the
that's
jobs
kind of like what it
yourself,
is. Yeah.
I mean, it has to be, right? Like there's like the whole reason why healer as a role exists is to handle a specific niche of encounters. So like you can't change healers without changing the encounters as well. Or at least you can't do it in a way that's going to feel good.
Yeah, because I mean, if you vary up the healers too much, you do too much. That makes the engagements with those fights a little bit different overall, and we'll start to have one healer is better than the other healer and everything else. But if you make just overall changes that would make it more fun to heal throughout a fight, that might be the easiest path for Square Enix going into 7.0.
I don't think you're going to get a fix out of set because like healers got this way. I think I complain about this on Twitter. I need to stop doing
Like,
that.
if you
Every
say
time I
anything on
post
Twitter, yeah,
I
complaining is usually in there, yeah.
yeah. But like healers got to where they are. Like it wasn't like a night and day change. Maybe with the exception of Scholar's toolkit going into Shadowbringers, but like most things were like slowly like chipped at over time. It wasn't like one change and now healers are awful, right? It's like there were like 100 changes that got us here slowly, and if we want to get back to like something similar or halfway, it's going to take like a lot of tiny changes to get us there. I don't think 7.0 there's anything they could do to like make healers immensely better. They could make it slightly better, and maybe that would be enough, given time. But
It's funny because I gave T a lot of slack when it came out, and I still think like T is like one of the biggest like letdowns in terms of ultimate because like it had the most potential. But like it is quite literally the closest thing to like a perfect healing fight that you can get. The only issue with T is that there's not a like if T had the mitigation checks of DSR, then it quite literally would have been like the perfect healing fight because it has the HPS checks down and it has like the individual roles. You have like wormhole, inception, right? You have those mechanics down. Healer's like it's not as hard to heal, but like you're still doing everything as everybody else, right? Like, you have those mechanics, and then there's just nothing after like BJCC, right? So like if they added like DSR style mitigation checks to T, where you let's say at the time like maybe like you need like instead of needing 60% mid or 50% mid to live in AoE, like you only need like 30% or 20%, right? But like they're more frequent. Like it would have been quite literally like one of the best healing fights in the game, but it's just missing like that style of healing, which is like the same for DSR and top, right? Like actually probably DSR. Top has a lot of issues that like aren't associated with healing in terms of like the healer role itself. But like DSR could have also been like a really good ultimate to heal if it had like the style of HPS checks that like T did, right? Like those two are probably the closest to like the perfect fight that they've released, right? And it's really weird to me like that they don't follow like that same design philosophy, because that's what I was hoping for. I was hoping top would be like a mix of T and DSR in terms of like the way they did the healing formula, but it was just like it was neither. It was neither. It was like a worse version of DSR in terms of like healing.
Yeah, instead people go out, they beat it without healers.
Okay, can we rant about that for a moment? Like
we can absolutely,
it's
go
great.
ahead.
It's great that they beat the fight without healers, but that is like that's not the statement about healers that like you think it is. Like any problems that healer have like nothing to do with the funny like the top no healer clear. That's just like, oh god,
It's more of a testament to other jobs toolkits than the healers themselves.
I don't I really don't like it when someone's like flaming healers, but they're not flaming them in the right way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure,
Like,
sure,
it's
sure.
important to be
Yeah.
like I'm.
Okay.
Far be it from me to tell someone not to flame something. Okay, I am a flame enjoyer, but like you gotta be precise and like correct with it.
Okay.
Kareth's like that older sibling that like he's allowed to like pick on his younger sibling, but like if somebody else does it, it's like
Everyone else is like, leave him alone.
yeah.
God. Also,
Uh,
when you were talking about T, I'm surprised you said it needed DSR deep mid checks and not what it's actually missing, Momo.
what's that?
It's the pinballs from A7.
Ah, God
Okay,
damn,
I mean,
no, dude.
okay,
Like, seriously,
I said
no. That was
Listen,
the jankiest crap back in the day. We don't need it back.
No,
It was the best thing, actually.
It was so good.
It was so. It was the most. Like, you don't understand the visceral feeling of slide casting out of the way of the fucking
I'll root.
massive death ball hurtling towards you in the party.
I played
while
Scholar.
you have steering wheel.
And going, I got
Okay.
away with that, right?
I played
right?
Scholar in that fight. One of the few times I did healing back in the day was that fight, and it was the last one I cleared as a healer before I started doing it again. I never got A8 as to how. Okay, so we were in a very casual group, so that was like the pinnacle of my healing days, and I was like, this is the stupidest thing.
Okay, to be fair though, that is like a very good example of a mechanic that's so simple that adds like so much flavor to like healers, right?
Yeah.
Like it
The
like
dodging
having to,
pinballs.
yeah, no, I'm
With
like
the
I'm
steering
dead
wheel.
serious. Yeah, I'm dead
Because
serious. Like you can't be near the party,
Yeah.
and you have to like pay attention to your surroundings, right? Because like let's say the balls come from behind you, your first instinct is to move forward, right? But if you move forward, then the party's in your way, and you're gonna explode them, right? That's like such a. It's actually one of the most perfect design mechanics. If I had to say,
Except for
like,
the
healing.
ball, it depends
No.
on your latency.
No, Frosty, wrong. L ratio. The balls were perfect. like
There's no way I would ever want to see those things again. I got ran
Okay,
over
they'd
so
probably
much.
be better. They probably would be better like today's age, right? Like everything like is much more I think consistent now than it used to be.
Not when I play on
But-
EU servers. It'd be worse still.
you know what? The jankiness is actually, I don't think that's server dependent. If you go back into A3S, digititis and those tethers are still as awful as they were back in Heaven's Ward. Like something is fundamentally wrong.
Yeah,
with,
no, I
like,
think they designed
the
them
whole
like
fights.
poorly, like they coded
Yeah.
it differently.
Dude, I'm getting PTSD remembering that I had to get in the magic jail.
Oh,
when I fight too.
are you talking about in 7?
Yeah.
It's like in Toy Story when they're like the claw and they like go they
Yeah,
get
and the
taken
healer
away.
needed to do it, right? The healer.
Yeah,
had
and
to
you gotta stand on the vent,
Oh, you
right? Or
stand
else
on the poison.
yeah.
Yeah, you stand on the gas. Yeah.
Dude, like all these things are just like there's like these are like the examples that healers need now. It's like it doesn't I'm serious. It doesn't have to be like something super intense.
You know
it
what?
Doesn't.
It doesn't.
Let's
no.
bring. Yeah, I'm with you. Let's go back to A2 as well. Bring that back in too, man. Like the getting into a mech and running bombs around.
Oh, A2?
Mm-hmm.
I had to do that as a Dragoon because my healers were awful. I don't know
did
how
it
I
as
feel
a
about that.
machinist. So.
I liked it, but I wish I didn't have to do it on Dragoon. We also couldn't get our ninja to do it because he was like a geriatric or something, and he couldn't like click on the bombs when like the enemy list overflowed.
Look, you can't get pinballs back and not bring the mech back as well.
Yeah, you can.
No.
Yeah, bring the pin. You can do it. You
No.
can do it.
No. If we're gonna go that direction, I need the mech back as well.
Everyone talks about hide error, but hide error was mid. The pinball's based.
Jeez. All right, we're falling into madness here at the very end of this show. We have been going up for over 2 hours now, by the way, which is kind of crazy to me. Every single time we do a show, it's almost like that, but like definitely today, I didn't feel it at all.
It's healer stuff.
You
Yeah.
never underestimate the rant potential of healer players.
Yeah.
Never.
Jeez. Well, before we we wrap up the show and everything else, let's do this. What other topics did we miss? Anything with healing? I think I had like a little mini list on the side of things that I just want to make sure we hit, and we hit all of them. Are there any other things that, like, on a healer show, talking about the state of healing in Final Fantasy XIV is pretty vital to talk about? Are any little things that were on your mind that you wanted to bring up?
I suppose we didn't talk about the fact that Astro's getting reworked next expansion.
Oh, is
I'm
it?
actually just kind
Again?
of nervous about it.
I got a
You know?
banger prediction. I got the
Stop.
best prediction.
I don't want to hear it.
Momo's heard it. You already know what it is.
I probably know what it is. Yeah.
Okay, guys, hear me out. Are you guys ready for this? Yoshi P's gonna love this because it's awful. So, like, all right, every 20 seconds, right? This is brand new system. You've never heard this before. Every 20 seconds, you gain a lady, right? And when you lose, when you use a lady, you gain a stack of whatever of funny points, right? And every 3 stacks you gain, so like every minute, maybe some would say, you gain a lord, and you can use the lord, and its potency is roughly equal to 4 malefics.
Okay.
You know what's sad? I think that might actually be a realistic thing they could do.
No, yeah, and they get rid of Earthly Star, so like you don't have Star anymore. So like that supplements like the
Ooh.
incoming lady healing, right? You make every lady like 300 potency, so like you get 3 a minute. That's like 900 potency of healing a minute. Star's already 720, so it's like, you know, you don't really lose or gain too much, and you know, there you go, boom.
Why don't we,
If
why don't we
I
just
end up
make
being
it to where you
right,
draw
it's not my
one
fault.
card every single time? Let's just do that. Or just get rid of the card system in particular.
Oh, don't worry,
The
it'll be
cards
on
are
the
too complex.
GCD.
All we need is lady.
They'll put the cards on the GCD or something. I'm sure it'll be fine. It'll be great.
Oh, I'm really nervous about the rework. I feel like it's just gonna
I
be
have
another
zero
white mage.
faith. I have zero faith. I have zero faith. I have zero faith.
I have
zero
all the.
faith.
You know what? I have all the faith. It's gonna be great, guys.
I don't.
Look, it's gonna be fantastic. Don't worry about it. Astro is going to be literally in the golden state.
They're going to
7.0.
listen to the casual players, but the casual players don't even know what they want when it comes to the Astrologian. Like so many people are like, oh my god, I love the old card system, and I look at them and I'm like, you haven't played the old card system. Like you like they love the idea of like, oh, I pull one card and it's like, oh, you know, it's every card has its uses, and it's fine. You can like that, but to say that system is like objectively better than the system we have now is like ridiculous. Like it just
like the problem with the old card system is that everything had its uses, but 2/3 of them were awful, and you only used them in very fringe cases, and then you just had it on your card list doing nothing. And like I liked the old card system too; it was fun, but it was also bad, and that's something we have to accept, you know.
I disagree. I loved giving enhanced arrows to my monks. Personally, that was
okay. No, it was fun. I actually, I mean, in terms of fun factor, yeah, it was more fun because you could do like wonky stuff like enhanced arrows, or like before spear was changed to crit, like the enhanced spears, like reducing your cooldown. Like that stuff is like intrinsically fun because it just makes the game play like just interesting, even if it's suboptimal, right?
You know what would be really interesting is if they made it to where you could give cards to other players and then they get an action, you know, where your duty action pops up, but then they can press it and time it with their stuff whenever they want to do it.
give them a duty
Oh,
action.
so
Yeah,
like
give them a duty
they
action,
get
yeah.
the card and they can activate it when
Yeah,
they want.
they
Is
have
that
the
what you
ability
mean?
to activate the card, but they have
That
to do
would
it within-
actually be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah,
Or
and it
like
would
you
just
could,
show up
like-
exactly where duty action would show up, right?
Wait, what if you could actually like place cards, but like you could like activate multiple at the same time? So like you could just like place your cards before a burst window, and like as the burst window came, you like activated them.
Wait,
That actually sounds kind of cool. I'm
Well,
not
they
gonna
did
lie.
Yeah,
sweets, like you get
that's
3 of a
kinda
kind,
cracked.
or you get like some other stuff, right?
what if it's like you Yu-Gi-Oh this bitch, right? Like you put them down on the field, and when you need to activate the trap card, you go run over there to the card and you stand on it.
They did that in
Yeah.
there was like that one dungeon where you had to run into like the frog thing. You know what I'm talking about? I think it was like
Oh the
Wanderer's Palace Hardware or something.
the Tomberry one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could just do that.
Oh, jeez. Okay, well, hopefully we'll see. I don't know. I have no clue if I'll be invited to that preview, but we'll see how that goes. I mean, they don't need to rework Sage. They don't need to rework. I mean, do they need to? I mean, in your opinion, I assume they don't need to rework anything, right? heavily?
I mean, we know ED is getting removed. I would be very surprised if Energy Drain is still around in 7.0.
Yeah, I mean, they
I
didn't want it to be here this expansion. They just begrudgingly gave it back to us after we whined loud enough.
I think ED being returned is like pinnacle people knowing healers are bad, but not knowing why they're bad.
I think it was fine in Shadowbringers, but with the existence of Sage, it's just like, it does feel so bad when like your co-healer's like a scholar, because like, you know, they just don't want to press like Aether Flow, because like, oh no, they're losing damage. But it's like, oh no, who cares? Like,
yeah, damage doesn't matter nearly as much. But all right. So is that the only other thing? Like the Astro rework? Was there anything else that we probably should cover on a show like this?
nerf Sage.
Nerf Sage.
No, leave Sage alone. It is perfect.
DPS.
All right. Well, with that being said and everything, I guess it is a good time for us to start wrapping up. I know, Momo, you got a place to be here in a little bit too.
Yeah, afraid.
Yeah. But this has been fun. I'm glad you guys came on. It was awesome talking about healers, especially since I've been so heavily invested in the role recently. So thank you for indulging me with that as well. I have no clue what the future of healers look like going into the next expansion, but I'm hoping for good. I mean, I think they designed Sage in a way that they should design it. So it gives me hope for whatever they're gonna do next, but I don't know. Maybe I'm over optimistic right now.
I mean, if you enjoy the way it is, don't let us take that away from you.
Yeah,
Even
don't
if
take it
you're
away
wrong.
from me, Kareth. I don't give a fuck what you think.
That's okay. Neither does Yoshi. Pete.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're pretty happy with the way healing is, and healing isn't like
Yeah.
awful. It's like, it's just
Yeah.
not the flavor of which
Yeah.
the majority of us particularly
I
enjoy.
feel like more than anything, it's like a game design or a fight design issue that then seeps into the job design issue. And if they change that step by step, healing, even with the jobs as they are, will become better.
Yeah, it really is like it is less of like a healing thing. Healing, like, fights can be fun to heal, but it's a matter of can it design fights that are fun to heal.
All you gotta do is have bad players, man. Guys,
it's not even like a bad player like point of view. Like,
you gotta trust us. We've done that before.
Yeah.
I'm the new happy healer here with the old jaded veteran healers discussing all this. We'll see how my opinion goes, because I'm going to be doing these fights for 9 months. 9 months of healing people and picking them up off the ground. So we'll see how my opinion changes the next handful of months, I guess. All right, well, let's go ahead and do some wrap-up stuff here. Shout-outs from you guys and everything. If you want people to find you, where they can find you, all that great stuff. And real quick, just roll call for Criterion, though, so people can know. Momo, are you doing Criterion?
Only normal.
Just normal? Okay. Rinon?
I'll be doing it. I'm not going to be doing any kind of race on it or anything, though. I don't actually think we're doing Savage until maybe the weekend. I'm not sure. So,
okay.
So yeah.
And Kareth?
I guess Kindred's going to be doing 2 different groups, but neither is racing. I think one of us is doing server up normal mode, and the other one's doing 2 p.m. PST the same day.
Yeah. I mean, on that note, like, I'm in kind of a weird spot right now with just not enough people really alarm clocking it. I mean, it's almost as many as that would alarm clock Extreme at this point. You know, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of people going and trying to get it right at server up. So I don't know what that means for the tracking side of everything. I'm going to be filling out for the next day or so, but I'm still going to look and see what teams are actually out there interested in doing it. It almost doesn't even seem worth it to have an event, to be honest with you.
That's unfortunate. That's kind of sad.
It is. But we'll see how that goes. I would like to get something going, and we do have people who are interested in being a part of that. I also have to set up a production server and do a couple things before. But guys, keep an ear out to Twitter for that, and I'll let you know. I'd like to be up and at least watch it, but if only two or three teams are out there doing anything, it feels kind of awkward to do it. But we'll see, and we'll see if there's more teams that get inspired over the next day or so. But that being said, Momo, can you say any of the last thoughts you have on the show and where people can find you if you want them to find you?
Thanks for having me on the show. You can find me over at twitter.com/FFXIVMomo and twitch.tv/FFXIVMomo.
Any shout-outs to anybody? Is there anyone you're like, I'm glad this person's in my life or anything like that? Or are you just like, F everybody?
Shout out to Team DN. Team D's nuts.
Oh, you said it. You said
I thought it stood for Death Snail.
It is Death Snail.
Okay, thank you.
No, why would it be Death Snail? It's not even DS.
You wouldn't get it.
Death Nail.
You wouldn't get it. You wouldn't get it, man. Yeah, the S is silent on in the name as well. Okay. Rinon?
Yeah, thanks for having me. My Twitch and my YouTube are both Rim Banana. You can follow me if you want. Also, thank you to my group for actually getting weeklies done in a very timely manner today, so that I wasn't late. Because it was almost a close one. It was almost a close one.
Oh, snap.
Oh, that feels great. Weeklies, getting stuff done in an organized time. At all. Sorry. I appreciate you coming on, Rid. I know this is the first time having you on as well. It was awesome to get to talk to you and meet you and everything. You know, just a quick side note, I do want to get like a show going with early guide makers. Discussing guide making and everything on, you know, right when like Savage Tears come out, that become part of, you know, just the strategy that's adopted early on in Party Finder.
Yeah. That's a can of worms.
I want to open it. I want to open it. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, just a small side note. If you ever get interested in something like that. But all right, yeah. Kareth. Yeah, you're coming on. I don't give a fuck what you say, yes or no. Yeah. Kareth.
My Twitch is my character's name, Kareth Crestfall. I'm not a content creator, so I don't stream. I stream infrequently, but that is where I will stream.
Yeah.
And I am thankful for Kindred.
Thankful for Kindred.
Welcome to the club, bro.
I wish they would like let me not heal though. You know, that would be.
Who would heal beside you in that group?
Oh, I don't care. I'm no longer asking.
Would you say you don't care?
Ooh.
I
hate Momo.
Yeah.
I hate Momo so much.
Yeah. Yeah. But would anyone in your group, do you feel comfortable with them healing, I guess is the best? Or do you not care about that either?
I don't. I mean, like, there are people that are willing to heal when we do all jobs, but no, there's no way. And all of them have to deal with me talking about healer. You think any of them are excited about the idea of healing?
Hey, to be fair, you had the chances here, but you know, you let Kamachi go ninja.
I don't want to talk about that. No, I don't want to. Don't talk to me. I'm blocking you on this.
Well, thank you all for coming on the show. This has been a lot of fun. I know it was kind of short notice getting it all together and everything. Running into just a ton of it. You know what? Content creation has turned out to be almost more work than when I was doing content creation on the side and doing my full-time job. It's intense. But yeah, it's interesting kind of figuring out how to get all this stuff together now too. But this has been a topic that I've been wanting to do, and you guys are all people I respect when it comes to healing, and apparently the community as well. All right. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for talking to me and letting me have my puppy dog eyes and trying to dimming the light a bit and make me sad about what I might be going into soon, where I'm not gonna have the fun of, or I'm not gonna enjoy rezzing people anymore. But I don't know. There's weird people out there that forever like that stuff, right?
I mean, maybe. I mean, you can rest easy knowing that Final Fantasy XIV is a game that has the armory system, and with it, you can play something else.
Unless your group doesn't allow you to, huh?
Come on, man. I'm trying my best out here.
Okay. All right. Well, that all being said, guys, we're gonna wrap up now. We'll do a raid. Momo, you're streaming after this, right?
No,
Oh shit.
we're just doing our fast weeklies. Like, not even gonna take like an hour.
Oh, okay. I tried, chat. I tried. Tried.
Oh.
Who am I going to? We'll figure out we'll rate somebody here in a second. But anyways, guys, hang around for just a moment more. We have a lot of stuff maybe coming up next week too. Pay attention to Twitter, Frosty TV stream, or the MogTalk Twitter, or on Threads. You know, that's there now too. And then I'll try to post an update about what we might be doing with Criterion, as well as what next week's show was going to be, which is likely going to be on Criterion as well. And then we have FanFest coming up, which I'm going to. And if you guys are going to FanFest as well, make sure to just say hi to me while you're out there. Just, also use deodorant. That'd be great too. Yeah, that's it, guys. We'll go ahead and say bye and then stick around just for the raid. All right, bye, everybody. Everybody say bye and wave at the same time. I'll know if you're not waving or not.
I'm waving. Bye.
Bye.